Pursuant to Section 84-1411 of the Nebraska statutes, the next regular meeting of the Board of Education of Douglas County School District 0001 and the Board of Educational Service Unit Number 19 will be held on Monday, March 21st, 2016 at 6:30 p.m. in the Board Meeting Room of the Teacher Administrative Center, 3215 Cummings Street. The agenda will be kept current and available for public inspection in the office of the Secretary of the Board of Education at the Administrative Building during regular working hours. Pursuant to Section 84-1412 of the Nebraska statutes, the public is hereby informed that the current copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the Board Meeting Room on the north wall. I would like to invite you now to stand and join us as Troop 42198, I got it, from Fullerton Elementary School comes and leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you so much. What a great job. At this time, I would like to ask Vice President Williams to lead us in the OPS vision and mission statement.
The OPS vision is every student, every day, prepared for success and the mission. Omaha Public Schools prepares all students to excel in college, career, and life.
Roll call, please, Mr. Ray.
Faye, Godding, America. Oh, sorry. Give you a chance to answer.
Thanks.
America.
Present.
Scanlon. Present. Snow. Underwood.
Here.
Vargas. Wayne. Williams.
Present.
5 present.
Thank you. At this time, I would entertain a motion to excuse the board members that are not here. Mrs. Fay had a commitment this evening, and then Mr. Wayne and Mr. Vargas informed me that they had work commitments this evening. I have not heard from Mr. Snow yet, so he may be on his way.
Move to approve the excused absences of Mrs. Fay, Mr. Vargas, Mr. Wayne, and Mr. Snow.
Is there a second?
Second.
So there's a motion to approve the absences of Mrs. Fay, Mr. Wayne, Mr. Vargas, and Mr. Snow by Ms. Williams, and a second by Mrs. Underwood. Roll call, please.
Godding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
Scanlon. No. Underwood.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
4 aye, 1 no.
Motion carries. Do we have to, right, motion carries. All right. With that, I would like to call Mrs. Farmer to the podium and introduce our school spotlight.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. The spotlight for this evening is on Alphonsa Davis Middle School. Congratulations to Davis Middle School's science team excuse me, for their outstanding performance at the Nebraska Science Bowl competition. The team competed in the Science Bowl for the first time and won the state tournament, which was held on February 6th at Wayne State in Wayne, Nebraska. 5 8th graders, Grant Godding, Nathan Malloy, Carly Flynn, Sage Kerr, and Emiliano Altazar, are now headed to Washington, D.C. from April 28th to May 2nd to compete in the national contest. We salute and welcome the team, the school principal, Daniel Bartles, and the science team coaches, Allison Temple and Daniel Stokes.
You know, Davis is truly the place where students' future takes off. In 2013, when we opened, we have had a lot of firsts, championships this or sports this, but for a school to have never competed before, to win a state championship, you're not here to hear me. I have 2 amazing staff that work with these young people and 5 amazing students that really win almost everything that they throw their hat into. So very talented young people. Want to thank the board for supporting after-school clubs and activities to allow staff to work with the bright minds that we have in our schools. And with that, Mr. Stokes, introduce your team, please.
Alrighty, so I was asked just to tell a little bit about Science Bowl and introduce our students, and I think a couple of them are actually going to talk. So we already said their names, but we have Carly Flynn, Grant Godding, Sage Kerr, Nathan Malloy, and Emiliano Altazar. So basically, Science Bowl is a quiz bowl style competition. A question is read aloud. It can either deal with mathematics or science, so there will be a mathematics calculation or a science question, and whoever buzzes in first has an opportunity to answer. And basically, you score points whether or not you are correct, and the team with the highest score at the end of the competition pretty much wins. It's a one-on-one competition, and after you get out of pool play, it's a double elimination tournament. So we were able to compete and make it to the championship round and end up winning the championship round. So in Washington, D.C., it'll be set up similarly with additional activities for the students to participate in, and a lot of science activities that the U.S. Department of Energy sponsors for us to kind of experience. So in order to prepare, we are pulling together high school level materials. Since we're in middle school, we want to push ourselves to become better. So we're going to the high school, we're borrowing books from some high schools, and we're also planning on hosting an in-house kind of math style quiz competition, because speed is also a factor. If you can buzz in first, you have a better chance of answering correctly. So that's what we're doing to prepare. I don't have...
And if the board wants to come and put a team together,
Yeah.
headed by Mr. Evans or Dr. Kerber, the challenge is there. I'm just saying, right?
Yeah. No, you can have a paper and like a 6x6 piece of paper and a pencil, no calculator. So that's kind of our plan for the upcoming months for our competition. So I don't know if you guys had any questions. I'm going to turn it over.
Who's first? Carly.
So, I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that we faced at the competition itself. So throughout the day, it started really early in the morning, but we did pretty good in the first rounds of the round robin. We were kind of close our first couple matches, but then from there we beat every other team that we faced. And then we were in the championship later that evening, and because we were undefeated going into the championship and the other team wasn't, they had one loss, we had to lose twice before they could lose once in order for us not to win. And the first match, it was really close, like we were neck and neck the whole time, but then right at the end they got one last bonus question right and passed us. So then it went to the second round of the championship, and that round I guess we just stepped up our game because we beat them by, I think it was like at least 30 points. It was a lot, and so yeah.
Don't brag.
Okay, and so now Grant's going to talk about how we felt after our win.
Hello, my name's Grant. We were really excited after winning it, to be one of 2 OPS teams to pass to win state Science Bowl is pretty impressive, and it's just really fun competing and going to these competitions. And to go to nationals and support the state and OPS, that's a pretty cool thing to do.
Good job. Well, as the parent of one of the students, I was there, and I don't want to be on a team. I heard the questions, and they're challenging. They're hard, and I give a lot of credit to the coaches and to our science teachers and to the new science curriculum because they were really tough questions, and it was very, very clear that our students had been exposed to things that maybe some other students hadn't been exposed to. It was great competition. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. Mr. Evans.
Madam President, thank you very much. Under the superintendent's report, I always have a listing of other award recognitions that are going on in our district, and I just wanted to point out that Davis Middle School's team in the 3M Math Counts Invitational is also going to compete for state, so we're hoping that they become state champions, just like this team.
Fifth. Sorry, fifth.
Oh, okay, but we have one.
We don't have that report yet. Fifth. We finished fifth last week.
We have one participant who moves forward, and I believe that then is Grant Godding. So we do have another state opportunity for Grant, not the whole team, but for Grant, and you'll be representing the state from the metro regional area. Where's the state going to be for that?
It's in Lincoln on March 19th.
Well, we hope you're back in front of us again with another state title for Math Counts representing us up there. So thank you so much for representing us in science and math, and thanks to all of you guys.
Mr. Scanlon.
I was just curious, what kind of careers are you guys interested in, being in kind of the science and mathematical fields?
Well, it's a science bowl, so we're like science-y. So I think we're going to go into the science fields.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe like physics or chemistry would be a nice field for us to go into.
What about you? What do you want to do when you grow up?
Me? Whoa. Okay.
Give him an equation this long, he'll solve it.
Right.
All right. Yeah, I think I'd like to be a physicist when I grow up, something like that. Yeah.
Save him.
I have absolutely no idea. So, engineering is something I'm interested in. So, anywhere in that field, it sounds interesting to me.
I'm looking into civil engineering or architectural engineering or something of that sort. So,
I'm looking to be a computer science engineer, computer science programmer.
I haven't thought about it a lot, but probably something in the medicine science field.
Well, I would just, commend you greatly on your accomplishments, but always just think about what you're going to do in life and what you want to accomplish, because that's ultimately, you can educate yourself, and you guys are obviously high achievers. Always think what you want to do with the rest of your life, even though you're in middle school. It's a big picture, but
I might have a science opening in 8 years.
there you go. It's always something to think about.
Mrs. Underwood.
So I just wanted to mention, as a female engineer, I'm really excited to see female representation on this group. But in general, you guys look like a great group of kids, and I'm really proud of you guys. That's something that, and you'll always be proud of. And have fun in DC. I love that city.
This is our first 8th grade group at Davis that spent 6th, 7th, and 8th grade all at Davis. So they're the first graduating 3-year class.
Well, we're all very proud of you, so thank you so much, and good luck in D.C. All right, thanks. You know what, we do need to shake hands. I'm sorry. All right, well, with that, we're going to move on to the board and superintendent communications, and our first report is from the treasurer, so Mrs. Kanoki. I believe her report is...
I would like to submit for your approval the treasurer's report for this month. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right, thank you so much. Mr. Evans, superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I want to start off, I suspect most everyone noticed this. 2 days ago in the World Herald, above the fold, they had this wonderful picture of a family that's being served in the OPS area by the early childhood program that we're doing in conjunction with Buffett Early Childhood Center, with the Learning Communities support, and it's just a great, great example of how we're going to make a difference in some of our challenging parts of our city that need some extra supports, and this is a great example of that extra support. So if you didn't see that article on the front page, please take a look at that. And the other update, as you know, we had talked earlier about drug dogs and even metal detectors at one point, and we did a survey with parents and staff, and at the end of the day, the metal detectors weren't highly supported for our schools, but the drug dog / gun dog was very supported, and so I wanted the board to be aware that we are going through protocols with all of our principals, and it's done on a randomized basis. In fact, a lot of schools in America do it. I know Millard has, or did have, their own dog. I don't know if they do. I heard it may have passed away. But we are going to be doing that in the near future, so I wanted the board to be aware of that we will be doing that on a randomized basis, but we're walking through the protocols in the next principals meeting with all of our principals, and it is something we talked about in the board meeting, so I wanted to kind of give you an update on that area since it was an area of interest. And the last thing I'd say is that we continue through the legislative session, and I know that our legislative leader's not here today, and Ms. Fay, but we do continue to work on that. I was at a GNSA meeting today, and there are several bills that are concerns to us, and we'll see what happens. I know we've got a meeting on Friday, but there are some bills out there that concern me, specifically LB 958 from the governor's office and 959 from the governor's office that I think we really need to be aware of. We had a lot of conversation about that and some of the implications for all the school districts across the state of Nebraska. So hopefully on Friday we'll be able to really dive into that and decide who's going to testify and what we're going to say in the legislative piece, because it does have pretty severe implications for us. Thank you, Madam President.
Are there any board comments? Mr. Scanlon.
I had the privilege to go to, I know it was reported in the World Herald that McMillan Middle School had a career day. Beveridge Middle School also had a career day, and I don't know the exact number, but I would throw it out at probably 30 to 40 members of the community came out to speak to individual classes as far as career opportunities and everything. I participated in it, and it was just really kind of an eye-opening thing that you got to see the different students that come through OPS, and you know, that we truly are educating those that will go into a career right after high school, and those that'll go on to a 4-year or 2-year post-secondary education and everything. So it was great to sit there and interact with the kids and to get their questions and just to try to allow them to understand what's out there. And I guess that's one of the things that I've always wanted to try to emphasize, is that, you know, you eventually have to go out and get or become a member of society and have a career, and it's much better to have a career than a job that, the job is the grind, whereas a career, you're out there contributing. So I thought that was very, very interesting to interact with the students, and the number of questions that you get are always interesting. So I was able to do that.
Well, I will add that I was at the All-City Music concert on Saturday night a couple weeks ago, and as always, it's a fantastic event, and I think I like the venue here at TAC. I love it because it's the acoustics are so much better than they used to be in the Civic, and the talent of our students is just unbelievable, and we know that comes from all of the great teachers who are working with our students. The guest artists this year, or conductors, were phenomenal as well. So I just want to give a shout out to the music department and all of the folks who provide that opportunity for our students, because it was an excellent evening of music. And I know there were a couple of concerts on Sunday as well that I was not able to be at, but thank you to everyone for that. And then Miss Merica?
On February 4th, I was able to attend the principal dinner that was hosted by Building Health Futures and Partnership for Kids, which was a great opportunity to recognize and celebrate our principals, mostly from the southern part of our district. So that was a good event. And then wanted to give board members and the public a heads up that the 2016 Scholastic Art Awards are coming up. It's amazing. There's artwork from students across Nebraska, so OPS and everywhere else in the state, on display here in the TAC building. And that will be February 24th through March 29th. So if you're running early to our March board meetings, you can stop by, walk around the building, and see some of the fabulous award-winning artwork by our super talented students. And there is going to be an awards ceremony on February 27th as well for that.
Ms. Williams?
I don't have a lot to report today. However, I did want to, I see the Ponca principal sitting out in the audience. I got the chance to meet some of the Ponca teachers, and it's always awkward at times to, when you're, I don't ever want, like, oh, you're a board member, like, let's just have a conversation first. But I just wanted to shout them out because they were amazing, very open and honest, and I think they felt me out for a minute, like, I don't know. But we had some really candid conversations, and I just wanted to say thank you, and if you share that with them too, I really appreciated their conversations. Amazing staff you have there, so keep up the great work. Also wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Brendan Allen, who is a student at North High. I gave him a little cred back there to Mr. Haynes. We had our 2 snow days, and so I know we talk a lot about, we don't really have students anymore that kind of go and shovel and do some of those things that students of yesteryear used to do. Well, just as I was having that conversation, Mr. Brendan knocked on the door and said, hey, can I do your driveway? And it wasn't him just out shoveling. What really caught my attention was not only did he shovel my driveway and the sidewalks and all of that, my neighbor, one of the girls next door, got stuck in the snow, and he went out of his way and helped shovel her out, and then went and did the neighbor's sidewalk, and just such a genuinely honest and wonderful young man, and I really wanted to give him a shout out for that. We need to see more of our young men out there doing that. And I was told he's got a twin that is in performing arts, and so shout out to the Allen family for raising some exceptional young men, and I hope to see them being leaders in our district. And lastly, just a couple opportunities at schools. I had the chance to visit Conestoga. I also visited Miller Park last week, and so it's so wonderful to be able to get into buildings and talk to teachers and principals and staff and students. It makes a world of difference in my life, and so to my fellow board members, they're saying get in the schools, we want to see our board members, and the students especially, they want to know what we're doing. They're excited to see, they see us all on the news, and they want to put faces with names, so I'm encouraging you all to go out. And lastly, Mr. Evans, I know you volunteer in a 6th grade and a 5th grade class. I know you met with them today, but the last board meeting, I reported the assignment that he had them do. And so he was King Tut walking in those classrooms today, because not only did they get 1 snow day, but they got 2, he's the man right now, so I'm just hoping you can work your magic maybe one more time. Just saying. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Underwood.
So I didn't want to be the only one without an update. We'll go 5 for 5 tonight. Just real quick, I was able to make it to the Norris Middle School Ed Spec Committee earlier tonight, and they had gone out to Davis Middle School to kind of walk around and see some of the features of Davis. And so it was great to kind of interact with that committee tonight. And I thought it was worth probably mentioning what one of the Norris staff members said. She said that Norris especially is used not only by the students and staff at Norris Middle School, but a lot of other students across the district and outside of the district and the community. Norris is kind of set in the middle of a neighborhood, and I love the fact that it's really kind of a community feature. And so I just wanted to mention, those bond dollars that the public so generously voted for supporting. It's going towards infrastructure that supports not only our students and staff, but the entire community as a whole. And so I'm just really excited for all of the schools that are getting upgraded with this bond work. But Norris Middle School especially, it's served the community well over the years, and it's time to get an upgrade.
I was at Norris tonight for a swim meet, and you're right, it is time for the upgrade, and very, very impressed with their swim team as well, their middle school swim team. Just as a reminder for the public, Burke's musical, The Beauty and the Beast, is this weekend. So if you are looking for something fun to do, join them. So with that, we're going to move on to public comment. And the first public comment is Amina Mejoudubi. I don't know if I got that right. So come to the podium, and please state your name and spelling of your last name and your address, and then you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and Mr. Ray will keep you informed. And
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Amina Mejoudubi, and I worked at Yates ECP 3 years ago, and I currently teach in Northwest High School. I teach ESL. I'm here today for the refugees that can't be here. Yates is located in a very diverse area in Omaha. A lot of these people do not have cars. They are so used to walking to Yates, and they actually, once a newly arrived refugee comes to Omaha, they're able to help them and get them familiarized. So what I was thinking today is by moving Yates from where it is, we're actually misplacing these refugees one more time. And they already have been misplaced from their countries and, coming here. So if we can just keep them in their home and keep them safe, and that is where they belong. When you go into Yates, it's like you go to a different country. So it's kind of difficult to talk about it without me being not emotional, because my heart is still there, but you have to go there to get that feeling and know what I'm talking about. And it's a beautiful building too. I live in the neighborhood, so it would be really, really sad to get rid of that beautiful historic building. And thank you so much.
thank you very much. Our next speakers are Tony and Tekta Newman. Please state your name, the spelling of your last name and your address, and then you'll have 5 minutes.
Hi, I'm Tony Newman. This is Tekta Newman, my wife. We live at 3814 Davenport Street. Tekta is a student at Yates. She goes there every day with our young son, and she has some comments that she'd like to share, but she feels more comfortable in doing this in her own language, and I will translate for her. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Napason Newman. I am student at Yates. ฉันเป็นตัวแทนนักเรียนในคลาส Family Room
I'm here as a representative of the students in the family class at Yates.
ห้องเรียนที่ฉันเรียนสามารถเอาลูกไปเรียนด้วยได้
This is a class where women are able to study along with their children in the class.
ฉันดีใจที่ได้รับโอกาสนี้ที่หลังจากที่มาจากเมืองไทยได้รับโอกาสที่เรียนที่เยต
I'm very happy to have this opportunity to study at Yates since I arrived here last year from Thailand.
ฉันได้ความรู้มากมายที่นั่นทั้งภาษามิตรภาพและความรู้อื่นๆ
I've learned a lot about in language, friendship and social relations.
รู้สึกปลอดภัยสงบแล้วก็ไม่ไกลจากบ้าน
It's a safe and peaceful environment, and it's not far from home.
ฉันและเพื่อนอีกหลายคนสามารถเดินไปเรียนที่นั่นได้เพราะไม่ไกล
I know.
ฉันและเพื่อนอีกหลายคนสามารถไปเรียนที่นั่นได้สามารถเดินไปเรียนที่นั่นได้เอง
I've made many friends who have been able to study there with me.
ฉันรักเยตทุกคนรักเยต
Everybody loves Yates.
Save Yates peace
Please save Yates. I'd just like to add a few more comments that we support the idea of building another school close to the TAC building at 32nd and Webster, thus thereby leaving intact the Yates building and its programs. These programs play an important role in the lives of the women and children who attend them, and they're essential to their successful integration into our community. To move the program to another location during the demolition of the Yates School and construction of a new school in its place would be very disruptive and would likely splinter and disperse this group, which now attends classes there. The momentum of the program, so carefully built up over recent years, would surely suffer. The program now exists in a friendly neighborhood setting where many students can walk from home to their class. It provides a welcoming, safe, and supportive place for study, which could not necessarily be the case if the program had to share space in a busy elementary school. In its present location, it is also an integral part of a vibrant and very well-connected Gifford Park community. And the building itself is in sound and good condition and has value in hosting not only this program, but also in serving as a multicultural and multi-use community center for the Gifford Park community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Thurman Statham. So please state your name, the spelling of your last name, your address, and then you'll have 5 minutes to speak, and Mr. Ray will keep you informed.
Okay. My name's Thurman Statham. My last name is Statom. I live at 1000 South 20th Street, Omaha, 68108. Did I forget anything? No.
I think you got it.
I'm here to speak about the Yates. You forgive me, you may have a few questions. I'm an artist, I'm a parent, my daughter went there. I guess I qualified through the NICE program, that's a Native American Centered Education. I was sort of honored. I'll speak a little bit historically about me, but I'm primarily, I do art and I develop art programming that helps kids to become smarter. I do this nationally. I travel, I work for arts at embassies, I do international programming for newly deployed ambassadors. I also do a lot of work at hospitals, and I basically help programs function better with out-of-the-box constructs. Yates, I first got involved with Yates through the NICE program. They came to my studio, a group of kids from OPS, and I dealt with sort of the cultural contexts of the Native Americans in the school system. And I partnered with them with the OPS through the Coneco Foundation, and we've been a partner with the OPS program for about 4 years. During that time, we've increased the graduation rate by 15% in the Native American community. It was part of a project that we wanted to do that showed sort of for the city and to be a part of it. I think that a lot of the effort, the Yates building seems to have become a functional element, and all through the NICE program. I've done personally workshops that dealt with family connections in their auditorium, and we've had activities from turkey bingo to regalia making to, currently, as a culmination of this project with Coneco, the Sherwood Foundation funded it. We're currently building a sort of a Plains Indian garden, and it's actually the first outwardly visible Native American influence architectural elements at the Yates School. We're making a medicine wheel, and it's all connected to the educational programming within the preschool that's there, and also the community, the surrounding community. For example, we're making a medicine wheel that doubles as a tool, and the elders within the Native American community are all going to be part of a storytelling component to it. We're building a pergola that's being designed by Native American, and that element will double as an exterior classroom because nature is a big part of that educational process. There's a turtle that's being built, and there's a lot of incredibly exciting. This program that's come out of Yates that's going on there is actually becoming a template that's being used already in other places. I also work a lot in the last with the Sudanese community, and one of the things that I've been honored to be a part of is how ESL functions, and how that, and being able to add out-of-the-box constructs to make it even more efficient, and that's been sort of a lot of fun. This garden that I mentioned,
1 minute.
1 minute, will be done in about March. And I guess what I wanted to say is that fabric and community is a huge part of what I do, and before this building moves, you should explore what the effect of the relocation is, the success of the programming that's there, alternatives that would maintain and fulfill the needs of all our needs. And I think this examination will really be pretty helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Bridget Donovan. Please state your name, the spelling of your last name, and your address, and then you'll have 5 minutes.
Hello, I'm Bridget Donovan, D-O-N-O-V-A-N. I'm Vice President of the Omaha Education Association, speaking on behalf of the Education Association, 4223 North 94th Street.
That's it, you're good.
Okay. And I'm here tonight. We just wanted you to consider the timeline that will be presented to you for the Human Growth and Development curriculum. And we understand and agree with the need to allow for parent and community input. We think that's invaluable, as we know you do. But we also want you to take into consideration the need to get the curriculum into the hands of the teachers before school is let out. And currently, it appears the timeline indicates that the input would be during February and March, and the plan would then come before the board in May, with the training for the teachers to be in the summer. And the perception, at least the perception of this last-minute professional development during the summer, which sometimes leaks into the fall, is that it needs to stop our teachers need to have the time to have the curriculum in their hands so that they can be fully prepared for the implementation when it comes about, in order to effectively plan and implement the curriculum when it's presented, when it's needed for the students. And this is an item that we have discussed on several occasions, and I believe we're in agreement on the need to have professional development done well in advance of presenting it to our students. So we would like to have a discussion, or for you to consider the need to get the curriculum to the teachers well in advance of the teachers actually teaching the curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Charlene Edmondson. If you would please state your name, the spelling of your last name, your address, and then you'll have 5 minutes to speak.
Hello, my name is Charlene Edmondson, CharleneEdmundsson, and I live at 5068 North 165th Street, 68116. And this is my first rodeo. I'm a grandmother of 8 that all live within the Omaha Public School System. And I have some questions tonight about the CSE program as it's going to be laid out for review for the parents. And my first question is, has there been one program and one set of books that has been chosen? Or the paper was a little bit confusing, or are there 4?
So actually, in public comment, we don't interact with the public, so you can go ahead and ask your questions, and I'm sure we'll all, be listening, and then we'll actually have that portion of the presentation a little bit later in the meeting. So feel free to ask the questions,
Okay.
but we won't be responding back to you.
Okay, great.
All right.
Great. Okay, so that was my first question, and I was wondering how that's going to happen. Are there going to be tables where we can go and sit down, and the teachers will be able to answer questions for us at that time? That was one question I had, and then I wanted to address, I was concerned about the time that's allowed on this, and I just listened to our former speaker, and, it was kind of a dichotomy, because I agree our teachers need time to prepare. However, I also believe that our parents need time to prepare and have enough time to properly review the information, and there's so much of it. My first thing is that there's 4 opportunities, and I was wondering, are each of those opportunities going to be the same set of curriculum, or is there different ones at different days, which would cause a family, say a family has, what if they got a bunch of kids and they have to review all of those grade levels, and is there going to be enough time for them to properly review them and decide whether they want their children in the program or whether they want them out? Another thing that I noticed is that it's scheduled over dinner time, which is really, really super hard for parents that have to feed kids. So I wanted to address that. And forgive me, because I haven't done this before. Let's see. Oh, the other thing is, in reference to the material, and I don't know if I understood that there were going to be possibly, the videos to be able to view. We need time to be able to see those videos, and we also need, I would like time, and I'm sure parents would also like time to review the credentials of the people that have put these products out and who they're affiliated with. And let's see. I guess in closing, I would just like to formally request a 30-day space to give parents enough time to properly evaluate. This is a really important part of our children's lives and getting them launched out right. So I'd like to request a 30-day opportunity and some more family-friendly hours to be able to review these things. And then I have one quick question, and that is, do teachers, I don't know if this is true or not, but I just need to know the answer to this. Do teachers, when they are presenting this curriculum, do they have the option to drop something out of what the curriculum is if they don't want it? Or do they have the option to add something in? I'd like to know the answer to that. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. I wrote lots of notes, so we'll have lots of questions for you, Dr. Kerber. Great, so I think that is it on public comment. Hopefully no one's indicating that I've missed anyone, so perfect. With that, we are going to move to the consent agenda. I wanted just to point out a couple of things. Item I-10, the PeopleSoft software version comparison, an extra document was added to that item here late in the day. So it's the second document explaining the why and where of the Oracle software proposal that's in front of us. And then what had been I-11, the change order on the beverage magnet portable classrooms, is now item J2A. So in case you looked at that before this morning, those are all the changes, I think, Mr. Ray, correct? Okay. So great. With that, at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda that is before us.
So moved.
So motion by Ms. Williams. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mrs. Underwood. Roll call, please, Mr. Ray.
America?
Aye. Oh, were there any abstentions? I'm sorry, I should have asked the question. None from anyone. Okay, sorry. Go ahead. I apologize.
America?
Aye.
Scanlon? Aye. Underwood?
Aye.
Williams?
Aye.
Godin?
Aye.
5 aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, with that, we're going to move to information, and we'll hit on the first information item, which is J1A, Human Growth and Development Curriculum Options for Review.
And I'll go ahead and jump in. I'd just like to start by thanking the board for the January 20th meeting, our board president, vice president, and board members. There was so much time you spent on this topic, deeply appreciated, and just thank you for your support. And the superintendent and all the building principals and staff that got information out to correct misinformation. And then I'd like to jump into the content at hand as my colleagues come forward, so you know what's going to be covered tonight. Many of the questions we just heard will be answered. We're going to go over what possible curriculum could be selected and the review process. As you know, we have 4 nights upcoming. That'll be reviewed, as well as the process for parent community review and the process for teacher and nurse review. So those specifics will be outlined. In addition, we'll talk about how we came to select the multiple editions of multiple copies of published materials and the crosswalk we do with our curriculum to make sure it matches. And then we wanted you to know that we're really marketing this. We've got a communications plan so that parents know about these nights. And I'd like to thank publicly Mrs. Monique Farmer, who has partnered with us, and we have a flyer. I'll send one this way. And that is now posted as already today on many building websites. In fact, the Central High School principal just sent me a copy of that on the Central High website. It's going to be on the OPS website. We're asking it to be distributed PTO, PTAs, as well as some media interviews we're doing. We're asking for that to be printed, posted in buildings, as well as put in newsletters. Earlier today, we did a taping of a podcast about frequently asked questions on human growth and development, and then Mrs. Farmer, Monique, is going to push that out to the district so that everybody within the district can see what we're doing and when we're doing it. So we've really worked hard on making sure that people know we want them to come out and look at these curricular materials. We also want them to know that this isn't the final decision. There's a field test next with teachers and nurses in March and April. And I think Bridget Donovan's point is good. We think it's key that our teachers do get this as soon as possible. We understand it's a compacted time frame, so we'd be back to the board actually in May, first as information and then later as action. And then the summer teaching training, of course, would be provided, opportunity for teachers, paid opportunity, as well as a full day, curriculum day on this topic in August. And we'll make sure the materials are to the teachers in advance because they're going to need to look at that over the summer. And then implementation is still targeted for the fall. So we've been working hard the last several weeks since our last meeting. And to go through all those specifics, you know the team, Jennifer LeClaire, elementary supervisor, as well as Ponca principal, Chris Denton, elementary supervisor, Karen Spencer May, and Dr. Spencer May is family consumer science, as well as health education, human growth and development. So Jennifer's going to lead off with a conversation about what's happening at those community review nights, as well as the teacher and nurse review process.
Perfect. Before you start, I think Mr. Scanlon has a quick question.
I guess I just want to emphasize to the public that this has not been adopted by OPS. These are how many curriculum that we're considering?
About 15 different.
Yeah.
About 50. So this is just the beginning process. This is not anything that's presented tonight that we are adopting.
Right.
It is just options, so the public understands that we are very serious about exploring all the options out there.
Perfect.
And not to take it in any way that things that are discussed tonight are going to be implemented. These are considerations that we're going through. This is a vetting process, and I just want the public to understand that that's where we are right now. We're not jumping into saying, hey, this is what we're doing. And, I want to make sure that everybody's understanding. I know that a lot of people want to jump to conclusions, but we are looking at a wide variety of things, and our options are open at this point in time. We're not approving anything.
Correct. So, and then the other thing we're trying to do is to be very transparent in the process that will take place. So that's really why we're having this discussion tonight, so that the public understands the documents they'll get, how it'll be reviewed, just like all other curriculum reviews, and how they will be able to score it out. So that's why we're here. So go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. I think what you said is important. We are excited that we will have opportunities for families and staff and community members to review all of the options that are available. So we're going to start next Tuesday having human growth and development teachers and the nurses that teach human growth and development review the materials or curriculum resources that would be options. They'll actually meet here in the boardroom and use a scoring guide to evaluate each of the resources that are being presented. They'll have time to review them on their own. So they'll take the resources to their table, review them with a scoring guide, looking for certain criteria, which Karen will explain in a little bit. So all of them will have the opportunity to review the materials and give their input. And then, beginning next Thursday, so on Thursday, February 25th at Burke High School in the cafeteria, and then on Monday, February 29th at South High School in their cafeteria, on Tuesday, March 1st at Northwest High School in their cafeteria and their commons area, and then on Wednesday, March 2nd at North High School in their, it'll actually be their Viking Center. All of the materials will be available for community to review. I think someone had a question earlier about will all of the materials be available at all of the nights, and yes, they will. So Our review nights, I'm actually going to just kind of read from here, but the review nights will provide an opportunity for whoever comes to review all of the potential human growth and development options at their own pace. We will not have publishers there to do any formal presentations. Staff won't be doing any formal presentations, but we will be there to answer questions or help anyone who might need it kind of navigate through the materials. So really, we want this to be an opportunity for people to sit down with the materials, review them according to the scoring guide, and give their input about what they feel the best options would be. So they'll use that scoring guide to give their input. We aren't exactly sure how many people will attend, but we're planning for about 300 participants at each site. So, and we you know, it could be more or less, but that's kind of what we're shooting for. The curriculum and material samples that we have are actually only available in English for the review nights, but there will be translators there at each site so that they can work alongside anyone who might need that, the materials translated. And then we'll also work with publishers once we narrow down the options to make sure that we would have those available in translated versions if necessary. We have asked each of the publishers for 20 copies of each of the resources so that we have plenty available for for community members to review. And then we'll also have computers available for community and parents to review any of the online curriculum. So we think we're in a pretty good spot for that. The way that we have set this up is that each of the curriculums will be organized by grade level. So if I'm a parent of an elementary student and I want to look at that elementary curriculum only, there'll be a spot for me to go where all of that will be readily accessible. They won't have to try and navigate through the grade levels. However, as a community member, they're welcome to review any and all of the materials that they want to. So if they want to look at specific grade levels, that's great. If they want to look at all of the grade levels, that's great too. And then I think in the document that we provided on the board, in the board documents, we had said that we were going to color code the scoring guides to help us as we tried to organize collecting the data, but we've actually been able to work with the research department. We aren't going to have to color code. They're going to pre-fill publisher names and grade levels for us and then collect all of the scores on the scoring guide on Scantron sheets. So we'll be able to do that digitally, which will help us disaggregate the data, but then they'll also enter any comments that people want to make as well. So that will help us, but that will be a little bit of a change there. We won't have to color code. So then we will take the data from the scoring guides, both from the teachers and staff as well as from community and parents, and research will help us to disaggregate that to come up with the top 2 options, and those will be the ones that we'll move ahead with field testing. So like Mr. Scanlon said, we don't have any idea what will be field tested at this point because it will be dependent on how the staff and public review those in the scoring guides. We want to give you just a little bit of a maybe help you visualize how that process will go. So we visited each of the sites to think about layout, and what our plan is to have a facilitator at the kind of the opening of the area that the materials will be to greet the community members or family members and give them kind of a lay of the land of where they'll be, where they'll want to go and where each of the resources are located. And then they will have the option of moving to whatever curriculum they want to review. And starting with that curriculum, they'll be able to take it from the table along with the scoring guide and work to review it. and then they will be able to leave their scoring guide in a basket on that table and move to the next curriculum. So we feel like it'll be a fairly smooth process. People will have as much time as they need to review. We did say that our community reviews would be from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be asking people to leave at 7 o'clock. We just need people there by 7 o'clock, and then we will be happy to stay as long as they need to be there to complete their review. So hopefully that will mean that we meet the needs of the families as they try and get kids to and from sports and dinner fed and all of those things that us parents do. So yeah, and that will be our process. The process will look the same at each of the schools. So we think we're set up for success there. Any questions about that? You have one, Katie?
Ms. Underwood.
So, and you may have mentioned this and I just missed it. So are is the staff review going on at the same time as the community review? So they're there at the high schools at the same time, or that's a different process?
That'll be a different night. So Tuesday,
Okay.
all of the staff that teach human growth and development have been invited to come here to the boardroom to review. And then the other 4 nights will be for families and community members.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
Oh, you're great. Anybody else?
I have just a couple of things.
Sure.
On the flyer, would it be possible to email that flyer out to parents that we have an email address for? I know we've done that on some other occasions, so I always think it's helpful. You may have parents who work or are really busy and don't actually go into a building to actually see it. So if we could email the flyers, and then I'm hoping we're also
I'll
going to...
answer that quickly. Monique and I have talked about it,
Okay.
and yes, we'll do that.
Okay, and then are we also going to do a voice message out?
We were
Probably.
just discussing that, and we certainly could. So
think-
if you'd like that also done, we'll get it done.
So what I've heard from the parents who I meet at PTA meetings and such is that they like to have that voice message about 2 weeks before, and then maybe about 3 or 4 days ahead of time so that they can get it. I know we're not 2 weeks, but...
No, I'm sorry, I just think I hit the computer.
But we're, I just think they like to be informed. You know, we're all busy with our calendars, and if we can get it on there. And then I was just speaking with the superintendent, so would it be possible for us to have the curriculum maybe in the back at each of the board meetings until we actually approve? So if someone's here and they come to a board meeting, they could actually pick it up and look at it as well. And then is there an opportunity for outside of these 4 meetings, would there be a space, is there going to be a space set up where people could come and look at the curriculum if this time frame doesn't work for them?
Sure, so Chris is going to talk about that
Oh,
a little
I'm
bit, but
sorry.
we will actually leave a copy of the materials out so that people could review
Okay.
them at any time.
Perfect.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. That's perfect segue, because we did just discuss as we were setting this up that it would be perfect that our first intentions were just to leave them in here for the board, but obviously we will have the public who will have different hours that they need to view it, so we'll have one copy of everything here available for anybody to come up and see for this duration as well. We'll also, as soon as the Scantrons are made of the feedback forms, the scoring guides, we'll make sure to have copies of those here as well, so if people want to submit those, we can do that as well. We have one document that is the curriculum, textbooks, and materials reviewed for human growth and development. That's where we have listed about 25 different materials that we have gone through. And I wanted to give a couple updates on that one. In this tight time frame, we have had our publishers contact us with further information. And so specifically on one of the resources, the Worth the Wait, we currently have the 10th grade version of that. We have the full curriculum for that, but we have made multiple contacts to them, either via email or by phone for their middle school curriculum, and unfortunately they have not gotten it back to us yet, so we'll still keep working to try and get that so we can have that available for review.
And can you put that list up so the public can see it that's here?
Yes.
Probably on TV too.
Absolutely, sorry.
Mr. Ray can do that for you.
Which one?
It's the curriculum, textbook, and materials. And master list. Thanks. Sorry about that.
Master list, yeah.
Thank you. The second curriculum that we have an update on is the Michigan Model for Health. If you notice, we had marked that one as going out of business. Further clarification is the department at the Central Michigan University is no longer being funded, so all of their materials that are selected will be moved over to a different publisher, but that publisher unfortunately won't have all that new material ready until next year, so we did eliminate that one as an option to look at. And then the third is the Rights, Respect, and Responsibility curriculum. Originally, we excluded this because some of the lessons directed the teachers or students directly to Planned Parenthood, but the publishers have since made changes and updates to this curriculum, and they will be sending the updated versions to us so that we can also use this as part of our review process. And again, there was a question earlier about, if we could make sure that the teachers have these materials. Any materials that were identified as being available online, we have already sent the login instructions and all of the lessons that we found that align to our new standards to the nurses and to the teachers so they can start an early review of those.
Can you also send that to the board? Ms. Williams just asked, sorry, that's a great
Oh,
question.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when we get to it, over with the materials, we have individual sheets that are those exact curriculum materials that you can take that sheet and review it at home if you want to look at that, because some of them are available right away. So, and Karen's going to talk to you a little bit more about the scoring guides, unless you have any other questions about the initial.
Ms. Williams.
No questions at this point yet, but I guess I just kind of want to follow up with that comment. Whatever you have digitally, couldn't get that out. If we could get that, Dr. Herberg, and if you and your team could work on that and get that to us, I think that would be helpful because we're getting questions about potential curriculum, and I think that will also help us kind of be prepared for this journey, and I need a little bit more light reading at night, so help me out.
Is that it there? Over on the side. That's it. You got it. And then it shows up. Click down here. It says open. You got it.
Attachment 4 and 5 deal with what the instrument will look like that we will use for the evaluation. It's very similar to ones that we've used in other curricular areas. If you notice at the top, actually we've made a couple of changes there. We've asked for the parent name and the name of their student, or if they're a community member, an address, zip code, sub-district. But then I wanted to go down to this part over here because this is what's important. And just very briefly, one of the things we would ask, how does it align to standards? Are the materials appropriate? How is it organized? The context of it, is it related to the real world? Can students use it now and in the future? Reading levels and vocabulary, we look at that. The attractiveness of the materials. Kids like things that are attractive and give them opportunities to look at graphs and all kinds of different things. So does it provide those opportunities? Does it provide a multicultural, non-sexist environment? Is it differentiated for different types of learners? And then does it provide multiple ways to assess? And is there a home-to-school connection? The only difference between that one and the one for teachers would be that the teachers would be a little bit more specific about assessments, and it also includes a section on teacher resources. Have any other? Are you done? Is there a question? One more thing? Okay.
Do you have a question?
I think Ms. Merrick has a question.
So I was just wondering, and I think maybe I can figure it out, but why are we requesting the student name of the parent or guardian who's there?
I'll jump in. We just wanted to verify that they were a parent. That's the only reason. It's just a means by which you can check that. It's easy to do in Infinite Campus.
Ms. Williams.
So I guess I don't want to put anyone off, and I get the premise and the idea, and I would hate to put anyone off by not giving feedback. So is it possible instead of maybe putting student name, maybe it's putting your student ID number or something so that their name isn't there? Personally, as a parent, I would feel more comfortable with that, and if I don't know it, I'm a texter, I'd text my child and say, what's your student ID number? But I think that would just be, for me, I think our parents and families would be a little bit more comfortable not listing names, maybe doing it that way, so that way no one else knows who those students are, and you could just have that. I just want to keep the student names protected, so I think that's important.
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. I like
And then I'll get the last document opened up for you. It's kind of our behemoth document for sure. This is the final all grades curriculum options document. And let me pull that up. It's so big it's hard to see on the screen, so. But basically, this document is a crosswalk of all the materials that align to our standards. That way we can show, based on the score that, or the little rubric that we have kind of up at the top, where it has the plus signs and minus signs. Plus means that as we looked at the materials, the standards really went, or the materials really went in depth above and beyond our own standards. They went beyond our expectations. The equal sign means that the materials just covered it, they met it, they hit it where we needed it to. A minus sign refers to the fact that there might be some pieces missing, might be a standard that's missing, or maybe the content wasn't as in-depth as we'd like. And then the zero means that the materials had no evidence of resources to meet our standards. And so as we looked at these materials, we tried to identify materials that were already being used by districts, and so we looked at our own neighboring districts, and like, for example, one of the items, the Great Body Shop, it's currently being used by Millard Public Schools. We also looked at Teen Health and McMillan McGraw-Hill, which is used by Elkhorn and Bennington. So we wanted to try and pull in samples that were representative of districts that are already kind of using these new materials. For your review, we have set up one of each of the resources and the directions for accessing the materials that are available online. We'll have them for you as long as you need them up here. And then these materials are the exact same materials that will be available for the staff to review and for the parents and community to review as well. It was a fantastically impressive process going through all of these materials.
Well, I'm impressed that you were able to order in so many. I know you were FedExing stuff in a couple of weeks ago and trying to get as much material in as possible. So we certainly appreciate that as a board. We're looking forward to the next process of having parent and community involvement. So thank you for sure for sharing this evening what that process is going to look like. Mr. Scanlon.
I stepped out for a second, so maybe I missed it. Just with the wide range of interest from a large number of community groups and community members on this topic, how do we through this process, how do we kind of ensure that we're hearing the most information from our parents, our teachers, within the OPS community, and we're not, I guess, being misled by outside organizations on whatever side they are, but we're focusing in on what our parents, students, and teachers are comfortable teaching?
I think what is the most helpful is our scoring guides, because we're utilizing the Scantron forms that will allow them to identify whether they are a parent, a community member, or also including, if they are a parent, that they include the student ID so that we can cross-reference and make sure that we're getting the real value from our current parents. And then the staff, it's kind of the same thing. They have to identify what school they are from, and also the teacher's name is included on the teacher rubric as well, so that we can cross-check that as well.
And are the community organizations, not only just the community members, but the community organizations, are they identified on these feedback forms? Are they identified as within the OPS district boundaries?
They do have to mark what sub-district they're a part of, so that is also another part that's on that, the Scantron form as well,
Okay.
as well as their address.
Okay, because
Thank
I
you.
think that's incredibly important, just obviously, as we've seen this past year or so, a large number of people come from all walks of life and all areas to give their input, and I think it's most important that the school board is able to analyze the data that is given to us from those key players as far as parents, students, and community members within our district.
Absolutely.
I think you answered all the questions from public comment except one, and we didn't really talk about, and I think I maybe know the answer, but I'll ask. And that is, when the teachers are teaching the material, what our expectation is, and I don't know who wants to answer that, but as far as adding or deleting material.
Our expectation is very straightforward. They're to teach the content standards in the materials that are provided and not to add their own personal content in or something different from that, or delete things, so that parents can clearly see, here's what's being taught each week, and that'll be posted as well. So it'll be like a public pacing guide of information. Here's what's taught week 1, 2, 3, or at the nurse level, lesson 1, 2, 3, 4.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to how that process will work as far as parent communication once a curriculum or a set of curriculum is adopted, depending on the grades. So thank you for clarifying that. Does anyone else have any other questions? Ms. Williams?
I just wanted to I know I made a request earlier, and so I just kind of wanted to direct this towards Mr. Ray, as if you don't have enough work to do. But if you could maybe put together a spreadsheet or whatever of this is the material as we're getting the online logins and stuff, and maybe just kind of putting it all together as opposed to just some random emails or however, if you could work on that, that would be great. So then we can just, when it comes to us, and we can look through each and say, okay, we have the logins for these, we can look through this at our leisure, and then we can just kind of track it together. I think it'd be easier for us to get through, and then if we have questions or if there's the material that we can't get online, then we can request to look at that. So if you would do that, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Great, Mr. Ray, we appreciate you. All right, great. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments before we wrap this up? Great. All right, with that, we're going to move on to, thank you very much for all your work, because I know you've put in a lot of extra hours and weekends. J1B, Social Work Program Expansion Grant Proposal.
We are delighted to talk to you about something that actually started 2 years ago, and I'd like to give credit to our superintendent who sat down with our benefactors, our community, Sherwood Foundation and others, and talked about the needs the school district has, one of which is wraparound services to support families and students by having more social workers. We currently have 7 social workers in our high schools, plus 2 others, a total of 9, and obviously in a district of 52,000 students. We are one of every 3 students in the greater metro area, one of every 6 students in the state of Nebraska. Obviously, more than 9 social workers would be good for us. So to get us started in this effort, we're getting funding from the Sherwood Foundation to support our efforts over the next 3 years, a $7.5 million grant approximately. And so we've laid out a planning process, we've laid out an onboard training. We're going to be doing work and roles and responsibilities. We've laid out some budgets, and we just wanted to provide you that information so that you could also see the direction we're heading. And although we've done planning, we're still at the beginning. We have not hired all those social workers, but we are ready to begin the next steps and receive the grant pending your future action on this, which would be March 21st. So this is an information item. And to do that, we have Mrs. Kara Saldierna. Kara is our Director of Special Ed, and then Mrs. Amber Wachurski. She is our Coordinator in Special Ed.
Good evening. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the expansion plan of our social worker program, and then Amber will give you a few more details. So, like Dr. Herberg said, we're proposing a plan with Sherwood funding that would, over the next 5 years, increase social workers by about 40 staff members, and then the following 2 years, increase social workers again by about 22 additional social workers, with the goal to be able to sustain that in year 6 or 7 with OPS funding. The purpose and what we want social workers to be involved in, and these are very broad job descriptions, but that they would be involved in the multi-tiered systems of support for behavior and that implementation as we move that out into schools, mental health services and referrals out to the community, wraparound support for families, accessing community resources, providing professional development to the school, especially around trauma and mental health, and then absentee reduction. In order to effectively expand the OPS social worker program from 9 to approximately 71 social workers, and that includes our current social workers that we have now, we're developing a plan, we have some things in place, and then we continue to work on that plan. And the 3 main parts of this plan will include a detailed framework based on evidence-based practices for school social work. We really want to make sure that the work that they're involved in is evidence-based, that we're following best practices for school social workers. And then a description and delineation of the roles of school counselors, school psychologists, and social workers in OPS, because we want to make sure that we don't have people overlapping roles or positions or tasks or jobs, and they each have a very special skill set, and so we want to value all of their skills and the things that they're trained to do and really help clearly define what each of those roles would look like. An external facilitator that's funded by Sherwood will be hired to facilitate the development of this plan and to facilitate those group discussions, so we get everyone's input and we're able to really objectively look at what their roles should be within the framework. To assist in leading and developing a comprehensive social work program framework, and then also to assist in the implementation of these tasks, a social worker supervisor will be hired, and that is also being funded by Sherwood. We submitted a grant application in September of 2015, and those funds were granted in October of 2015, and that will be sustained by Sherwood over the next 4 years. And that total award was $639,743. That grant award included the salary for the supervisor, benefits for the supervisor, and then also that external facilitator fee that Sherwood is paying for as part of that framework process that we'll be developing. And Amber's going to give you just a little bit more information about what that supervisor will be responsible for, and then also a few more budget details about the program.
Good evening. So some of the responsibilities of that supervisor for the social work program will be to assist staff in consistently implementing some of those social work services across the district, providing professional development, representing OPS social work in different community initiatives, co-appraising the social workers with principals, assisting in the development of social work, that program framework that Mrs. Saldierna mentioned, and assisting in the planning and implementation of the multi-tiered systems of support for behavior. And these tasks will be important as we expand this program. So this month, a proposal was submitted to request support from the Sherwood Foundation for an additional 40 social workers over the next 5 years. So this would be approximately 8 additional social workers per year. If this is approved, the Sherwood Foundation would be contributing $7.5 million over that 5 years. OPS then will strive to sustain the expansion at year 6. And their priority for this expansion is to support students at the elementary and middle school levels, since we do have social workers at the high school level currently. And additional funds were also requested for computers and printers for social workers, in addition to professional development funds for that staff as well. So schools, the criteria that we will use to determine which schools might receive a social worker as we continue the expansion will be schools that are participating in the MTSSB. We'll look at free reduced lunch rates at the schools, and we'll be looking at schools or persistently low achieving schools for that criteria. This table is a proposed expansion plan over the next several years, And as you can see, Sherwood would be supporting the salaries of the social workers and the supervisor for the first 3 years. The Omaha Public Schools would contribute to those salaries in years 4 and 5, and would strive to sustain that expansion in year 6 and potentially into year 7 as well. And then the final slide is the final budget request from the Sherwood Foundation. And this includes salaries and benefits for those social workers, the technology fees, and the professional development fees. And that total comes to just over $7.4 million over those 5 years. So we would welcome any questions you have.
Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple of notations. I think you heard Amber say strive to support and maintain, because obviously we don't know. When you start to try to predict funding 5 years from today, we don't know. I mentioned 2 bills that we're going to be testifying about, LB 958 and 959, that have huge implications. So I can't predict exactly what our level of funding, which is why we say strive, because it may be that we can't support it to that level. I'll just be quite frank. Depending on what happens in Lincoln, we don't know all those dynamics. And so it may not be quite as robust later on down the road. I think we're going to see benefit for our young people as we look at our persistent low performing schools. One of the things that always shows up is the need for not only mental health services but also family services that connect them to services, because the young people are in need, and those needs aren't just met by themselves, rightly or wrongly. And I know I have some community members that say, well, they ought to take care of it themselves. Well, that's a nice thought, but it doesn't always happen, and the young person deserves the resources regardless. And so I see this as a great opportunity to look at that and look at it in practice, but I also see it as an opportunity that it will be difficult without state support down the road, and some of the support would have to be replaced by using existing funds for existing positions and maybe shifting internal staff in the district office or other positions to fund this many positions down the road. So I wanted to be clear on that we have not, and I haven't asked Ms. Kanoki to set aside, nor could she 5 years down the road, set aside anything, because we just simply do not know. But we also wanted you to know that we hope that we can. And we hope that this demonstrates effectiveness, that we can show data-driven results, and they're going to do an external evaluator to the program, and they should. Pretty significant investment on our philanthropic community, but I wanted the board to be clear that we're not able to make 100% on where we'll be 5 years from now, even though we're showing a 5-year chart. We just simply can't make that commitment.
I have a question on the high school piece. And so can you explain the social workers that we have today? And the only reason I ask is last week I had a call from a parent who needed me to get involved in trying to track down a social worker. But that individual at the high school was not full-time. Are all of our social workers that we have are full-time?
Yeah, yes, at the high school level, yes. Each high school has one full-time social worker.
And then do they have some additional people from the community maybe that are also helping?
So they could have community counselors, possibly
Okay.
would be that person.
Okay. So is that why we're not looking at doing, I mean, our high schools have so many kids, and I get lots of calls on high school-related issues, and I feel the pain having high school students and having had high school students. So I'm just curious about the focus on elementary and middle, even though I know we need it there too as well.
We've had lots of discussions about where to prioritize. Ideally, we'd love to add 150 positions and put 4 of them at the high school, but we tried to look at where can we have the most effectiveness, where can we do some early intervention, what are the schools that have some of the least amount of supports. High schools have a lot of students, but they also have a lot of counselors and administrators, whereas some elementary schools maybe only have the principal and maybe a counselor. You know, the support staff sometimes is a little bit more limited just because the schools are so small. So, and at the elementary level, the kids can't always advocate for themselves, and not that high school students can always advocate for themselves, but sometimes when the students are so young that we really need to be providing services to the family as early as we can to do that early intervention. So that's some of the conversation that we've had, and we're going to continue. It's not set in stone that high schools would never get an additional social worker, but just as our preliminary conversations have been, where do we start? Where can we be most effective? Where's our greatest need right now? And where are we going to start year one? So
I appreciate that very much. That explanation helps, so thank you. Mr. Scanlon.
I have a couple of questions. I guess, why should OPS take on these extra roles when we have current social workers out there? We have Child Protective Services. Is there a way to better our partnerships with them as opposed to hiring on more social workers? Because that does bring a lot more cost to us as a district than working and refining our partnerships with the current existing organizations within the community.
Well, I think one of the goals would be to prevent students from getting to the point where they're involved with Child Protective Services. So if we can detect early warning signs and some at-risk indicators with families, that perhaps we can help refer to services earlier so that students don't have to be abused or neglected before they get access, because unfortunately sometimes that's what happens now, is that CPS isn't able to step in and provide those services until there is abuse and neglect. So from my perspective, it gives us an opportunity to be more preventative quicker before a child has to experience that abuse and neglect. But a valid question, and unfortunately there just aren't. We see a lot of kids in need, so we know that there are some gaps in services to families being provided in our state.
When I don't dispute the gap in services, I guess it's just my understanding as in the past administration that it wasn't encouraged to call Child Protective Services or 911 in certain situations, and now we've started to change that mindset, and I guess with our change in our mindset, that we are hopefully getting those students at an earlier age that need those services. I guess it's one of those things that it's very difficult, not only just bringing on more employees and bringing on more costs to the district, but also figuring out those boundaries between the school and those families. And I think those organizations like the Child Protective Services and other community services, they allow OPS to have just kind of a boundary of saying, you know what, we feel that this student needs these services, and we're referring them to, or we're calling those services, so then that gives OPS some, just a third party, if you will, to try to help with those family services. I don't know, I mean, I understand that we want to give as much services as we can to our students, but I also think that we need to partner better with those services that already exist within the community, because as Mark Evans had said, we don't know what's in our budget. We don't know if the grant's great, and I think it's a very generous grant, but you know what, in year, was it 3 and 4 that we have to start to contribute? I mean, what happens if we start this program and it's going along great, and then in year 3 and 4, we can't support that financially because cuts in the budget and everything, and I'd hate to see that go away. I would rather see us have a stronger partnership with organizations that already exist, and maybe some of those funds can be worked in a way that they are facilitated between OPS and our student needs and what's already out there. So I think that's a route that we really need to look at, just because that might be more sustainable than what we're able to do in 4 or 5 years as a district.
Yeah, and I think that's something the supervisor can start working on in this first round of social workers that we hire can work on, is really developing those further relationships with outside communities and working on that referral process so that we can be more efficient with the community services that are already available, so we aren't duplicating services.
And I guess the last thing I'd leave it at is, OPS has a very unique situation that as much as we'd like to help every student, and we have to continue to strive to try to help every student, there are certain students in our school district that are going to be unreachable. And, as much as we try, we're not going to reach every student. We need to continue to strive to reach every student. But, that's got to be looked at as, unfortunate. We can't just keep throwing money at a problem that we cannot solve effectively. I guess it's one of those things that as much as we want to, we have to continue to try to help every student, but we got to understand that in reality, we're not going to be able to reach every student.
Ms. Williams.
So I just wanted to say a few things, and I understand where Mr. Scanlon comes from and his rationales, but I really wanted to kind of address a few of those points and how this benefits our students. First and foremost, Nebraska Health and Human Services is kind of getting a full rework. We have the new CEO, Courtney Phillips. She's been here for about a year now, maybe a little bit more than a year, and I know that she's really trying to fix a lot of issues with Health and Human Services and all of the things that come with that. And where this, for me, becomes a priority issue is I see students on a regular basis. And this is a great opportunity for us to keep our students safe, to keep them in schools. And quite honestly, my own personal experience with outside agencies tore my family apart. And I see it with families every day in schools. They're tearing families apart. They're removing them. They're replacing them. I think I'm a great mom, but when you have a child that has some issues, there's just a lot of things that come with that. And I want us to be mindful to not look towards those outside agencies because, truthfully speaking, they're not in our best interest of our students and our families. I don't know what this looks like 5 years from now, but the fact that we have those dollars now and that we're able to bring social workers in, I'm curious to see what this looks like as we move forward and we get those first dollars and do that. But we do have to be mindful that our students should be our first priority. And although it may cost us a little bit more to keep them safe and to get behaviors on track and get those supports for those families to get that is the number one thing we should be focusing on. And I get it, Mr. Scanlon. I totally the taxpayer dollars and having these resources, but if those resources are broken, I can't personally sit here and say that I would feel comfortable allowing our students and families to be placed in those hands. I know a lot of families that are doing everything that is asked of them, and that's still not good enough. And their kids aren't coming back home, and they're in foster care, and it truly tears families apart. So I'm excited to see this. Again, 5 years it's a little while down the road, but I want us to be cautious as we're doing this of making sure, like we do with everything we discuss at this table, that our students are first. We are, I understand parents are the first line of defense, but after parents, we should be right behind them. And so this work to me is very important. I know those families that are doing the right thing, and their son or daughter had an issue where they're overcoming some obstacles, and it's horrible when a governmental agency can reach in and tear you apart. Why can't we be there to help those families? So I'm happy to see this, but we will have more questions moving forward. But I just want us to be cognizant of the reason why we're here is to protect 52,000 students, those students that are vulnerable, that don't have someone to advocate for them, or their parents don't have someone to advocate for them, and they're giving their all, they're doing their best. They may not have the resources, they may not have been brought up in the environment where they can work through some of these issues. So I think this is a very important thing. We talk a lot about suspensions. We talk about expulsions. A lot of those things are behavior-based. So if we can get some of those things worked into the schools where there's an opportunity to work through an issue before we're reporting them to the state, if you've ever been in a school building where CPS has been called, it's traumatic for the kid. It's not really traumatic for the school itself, and it's traumatic for the family, but now this kid has been displaced because we've called an outside agency where we need to do our due diligence to help those families overcome obstacles. That should be the last option that we're looking at. And so I will never willingly be open to having outside agencies come in and be that first line of defense. That is their work, but on the same token, these are our kids too, and we definitely have to have them in school learning, because if they have the transition 4 and 5 different schools in 2 or 3 years, our kids are failing. So we have to set up those protective barriers around them and support those families.
Ms. Merica.
I just kind of want to jump in and echo some of the things. My microphone is really, really loud tonight. Echo some of the things that Ms. Williams said. I think we do have a duty to do what is best for our students, and I understand the concern of, well, how are we going to sustain this 5 years down the road? We don't know what our financial picture will be. We don't know what our financial picture is going to be next year, technically, because the legislature can do whatever they want to school funding, and we really have no control over it. But I anticipate, knowing you guys and the work that you've done, that you're going to keep track of data and be able to come back to us every year and give us an update of, this is the progress that we're making, here are data-based results showing that what we're doing is working, so this is how we're going to continue it, or this didn't work, here's how we're going to change things. And if in 5 years you say we need X amount of dollars set in our budget to keep this continuing, and it's been working, I'm confident that the board at that point in time is going to say, we'll sit down and figure out how to do it. Something I wanted to touch on, I heard CPS referred to as an organization, and it's not. It's a government agency. Nebraska has one of the highest child removal rates in the country, especially for Native American children. It's a really sad fact, and as Ms. Williams said, once a child's in that system, even if a parent does everything that's asked them and everything they're told to do, it's almost impossible for them to get their children out of the system. So I see this is stopping that connection with the system from happening. It's keeping those kids from getting in the system to begin with, which should be our goal. And we do have a lot of great organizations in our community, but we also have a lot of families that don't know that those resources exist, or if they know they exist, they don't know how to get connected with them. And that's, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of where this position would step in, is recognizing this family needs these services to be successful, and helping them get connected and in touch so that they can make those things actually happen, instead of the family just having to rely on figuring it out as we go. You have someone there with you, assisting you on the way, so that the family and the child are receiving what they need to be successful in their education.
Mr. Scanlon.
I guess another concern that I have is, how would OPS be any different than the organizations or the government entities that exist? I mean, how do we, and how do we say, oh yeah, OPS would be more successful than current social programs? I just don't, I think we're starting to cross lines as far as, again, as I've said before, OPS, the job of OPS is education. And when you get into family issues and social issues, you do need some boundaries to keep you from bleeding over. Yes, it's a holistic approach to educating our kids, but it is something that I think that we need to work with existing organizations to better the relationships, to understand how we can improve that. But if we start getting too broad of a spectrum, we're going to lose focus of our job is to educate students. And our students come from a variety of backgrounds, and some of them are very difficult to deal with and for those students to overcome. But I just think that we need to understand that we need to have clear-cut boundaries in order to focus on what our goal is, and that's to educate the children.
So I guess I was just thinking back when I was looking through some of this material and thought back to purpose-built communities, and I know we all visited there, and I remember specifically asking the principal, how is it that you're able to get students who happen to have 97% poverty to a 97% success rate on state testing, and talked about a number of different things, and one of those was the number of social workers that they had in that school system, and it really struck me as very connected to the challenges that students have. And so I often give Rob Dixon a hard time about having my phone number larger than the district phone number, but I get a lot of phone calls. I get a lot of phone calls at night, and Mr. Ray knows. And I think the ones that challenged me the most, and the one that challenged me last week the most, was a mom who called me and said, "You're my 911," and she had a real concern about her student potentially harming himself, and my immediate thought was, we need a social worker in there right now. We need to be able to help the student. I get a lot of calls from all over the whole district because my phone number is bigger. No, it's not. But because I think when people see the face of a mom, they say, okay, maybe you can help me. And I recognize the challenges because of so many stories and so many nights that I've spent on the phone with families, whether it's a Friday night or a Tuesday night or whatever night of the week it is. And so for me, I look at this and I think, yeah, it's expensive when you get down the road. Maybe we won't need as many social workers if we can get some issues addressed. But when you're in the first 3 years, you have the opportunity to really touch the lives of children who are in very difficult situations. I happened to spend an hour in a nurse's office because I was waiting for a child to come in and get some medicine, and it was taking him forever. And I saw more in that hour than I think a lot of people see in a week or a month or maybe a year, and really understand that we have challenges, but for a lot of these kids, they have no one there to support them. They may not have a parent. They may not be living with a parent, and so for me, just because of all the phone calls that I get personally from parents across the district, which I appreciate that because it helps me to have a great perspective on what's happening. But I recognize the need for these types of situations, and I also recognize that turning a family over to Child Protective Services may be the last resort that we have to do, but it may be. I mean, as we know, it may be something that has to be done, but if there's some other opportunity there. So I just think back to purpose-built communities and to some of the personal stories that I've had given to me over the last, period of time since I've been on the board. And if we can have a grant for this in the first 3 years and then try to sustain it, clearly, if we can't sustain it, we'll have to address that in our budgeting process. But that's down the road a ways. So anyway, that's just my personal perspective on this. Anyone else? Ms. Williams?
So the last thing I'll say is that the schools are connected with the students. The schools and the staff at the schools know the students. The outside agencies have no clue. As a student being caught up in the system, they are truly a number. Where you have staff in a school that can understand the family dynamic, the background, and that to me is why this is the piece that we should look at. Granted, we can talk about funding and how down the line and all of that all day long, and we can talk about that later as well, but if we're not addressing the issues where we can address the issues, just today, I saw in a school that I was in, a student that they really needed some help, and the counselor took time out of his day. Outside of, it was a little bit of a challenge, so I'm not saying the school, but, taking time away from running late to a class to teach a class to help this student and their family get the resources that they need. And we're seeing more of this in the schools where the social workers would be the conduit to get those services, and that at the school level, counselors can teach what they need to do and they can stay on their job portion, but we're finding more and more counselors are taking on the social worker role and trying to match families with agencies and resources and try to teach at the same time and still try to come back. And I mean, it's just such a dynamic, and I will always advocate for, especially my board colleagues, is to go into a school and go into the office, because that's where the action happens. That's where you're going to find out how many of these students you have every day. I mean, this is not, from our level, yes, we're looking at the 10,000-foot view. But going in and seeing students and families having these challenges and just saying, well, we're just going to pass the buck, because to me, that's what we're doing when we bring in those outside agencies, we're passing the buck. I want to say that we are educating students. We're supporting families to be successful. If the family's not successful, we're never going to educate that student, because their mind is going to be in 20 other places. They're thinking of, where am I going to eat tonight? Where am I going to sleep tonight? Am I ever going to see my mom again? I mean, these are legitimate things that our students are questioning. You know, they don't have a comfort zone, and school is that one place that they have people that they trust, people that care about them. They're getting, you know, at least 2 square meals a day. So when we're talking about this, let's think about the child and not the dollars. I understand our due diligence is to make sure that our finances are where they should be, but if we're talking education, if our students don't have the supports that they need, we're not educating them anyway. We're just somewhere for them to go to be warm and be comfortable for 7.5 hours a day. I would rather see them getting the services they need and getting that education that they need. And I was the kid that in 12 years of school, I went to 17 different schools, and there wasn't someone to come in and say, oh, this is okay. So I get where the kids are coming from, and I only share that because I've been there. You know, this happens every day at nearly all of our schools. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic background, your racial background, your cultural background. This is happening every day, and this is the one way that I believe that we can support our families, we can keep our students getting educated, and I just think it's a win-win, and we'll figure out the money part when we need to, but while we have these grant dollars, let's take advantage of that and let's help some families, and let's make sure that we're doing what we need to do, what every student every day prepared for success. If their family life is torn apart, they're not going to be prepared for success.
Okay, thank you so much for being here and sharing the information with us, because it is a big price tag, and we thank you for sharing the information, and we look forward to a future item. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, we're going to move on to the strategic plan update and that information item. I think Mr. Lawaru is headed to the podium.
Madam President.
Mr. Evans.
While Mr. Lawaru is headed to the podium, unfortunately, we'd asked one of our principals to assist us in the presentation, just so you could hear how a principal feels about the STAT sessions and how we tie in all the correlated initiatives to the strategic plan. But it was Mr. Haynes, and you may have seen him in the audience earlier tonight, but unfortunately, he's had a student in a car accident, and he has done what principals do, and he is left to check on the student. I don't know the student's current situation. Sharif, have you heard anything?
I don't know, other than that the student is okay, but he wanted to be able to touch base with the family, and obviously pretty shook up, and was going to give me an update as soon as he connected with them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Well, here to update about the strategic plan, where we're at with that, open to kind of walk through that particular process with you, where we're at, and then open it up to any questions that you may have. If there's anything that I'm not able to answer in terms of the process, because it's pretty obviously in-depth, what is being done, and so if there's anything that I can't answer, I certainly will take that down and make sure that I get that information to you as soon as possible. Starting off, one of the things that I want to do is kind of reflect back on briefly walking about. We have our strategic plan in place, and that there's 7 guiding principles for that. And the guiding principles allow us to look at the main areas that it will take to move our district forward in accomplishing our mission. It's collaboration in these areas between the board, between the administrators, between our parents, our students, pulling everyone together to be able to make this happen. And there's a lot of people that are involved in this process. There are 26 objectives underneath those 7 guiding principles, with the process that those objectives and objective measures are going to be what really define the work. How we accomplish those objectives are strategies. We have 156 strategies that we are to accomplish based on that strategic plan, and we take this very seriously and do much to be able to work in all of those areas simultaneously. However, there were some areas that were prioritized by a process last spring where we looked at, as we did the previous year, what are the areas that we will prioritize in that process. What we have in play, as you see here, are 16 different areas. Basically, with our particular process that's in place, the objectives in these particular areas allow us to be able to accomplish things in a variety of areas. So the objectives have within that elements for teachers and administrators, for parents, for schools, supports in terms of students, but also the district foundational basis that we need to move forward. And it really takes all of those elements to move forward, and we have a mix in that area. For the Year 2 implementation, these are the prioritized objectives for students, and I know many of you have your strategic plan handy. You guys kind of keep that with the pillow, and the extra copy in the car maybe in case there's traffic jam. You kind of whip it out and kind of keep focused. Same way here, we're taking a look at all of the different elements, but these are the key areas. Just to touch base on these really quickly, in the student area, there are 3 focus areas, and we refer to them by their numbers, but each of them are listed within the strategic plan. The first number there representing the priority area, then the objective is the second number, and as I mentioned, we have 26 of those. And so we have students with 3 focus areas. We have parents with 2 focus areas. One is about respecting the diverse perspectives and values. Another one in terms of increasing the level of parental engagement in all facets. So home engagement, school engagement, and also our district's supports to learning. In the teacher administrators area, a lot of this is in the area of having highly effective teachers as well as highly effective principals in each one of our classrooms, each one of our buildings, but also being able to provide them with professional development that's highly effective and really seek feedback for continuous growth. And that secondary piece of it is not a light area. We do quite a bit to make sure that we're getting feedback and adjusting and making that continued growth. The second 2 are the 4th and 5th areas. School, well, let me count that out. 4th and 5th. So our school areas, we have 4 strategies that are within this, ensuring that the school buildings are safe and secure. Of course, we're talking about high quality, inclusive early childhood education for all students and a rigorous, guaranteed, differentiated, and viable curriculum for all students. And again, this is taking a look at being able to find out how we adjust to ensure that all of our students in a variety of different demographics and subcategories are being served. In our district foundation, we're talking about instructional practices that exist within the district, and then also looking at ones that exist in other districts as well to find out what's the best way to approach the implementation of our instructional practices. We also want to enhance the efficiency and equity. This is related to the transparent and effective use of our resources. So taking a look at our facilities, our staff, and our other financial resources. Also 6.1 and 7.1. One of them is about an aligned network that works strategically to support students and families. That particular work, a lot of that is being done through the Office of Community, School, and Family Engagement, but obviously that ties in with so many different areas of our district. And then the final priority area being improving both the internal and external district communications with all stakeholders. And there's so many that we have to address in so many different ways in which we can get connected with our constituents. And the big challenge for us is making sure that we take a look at a variety of ways in which we can broadcast out on a very broad basis what we want to communicate, but also trying to find those niches where students or families express that they're not hearing about things, and finding out where is it that they seek their information from and how can we get out to them. Some of those additional methods may take additional people, and you may have a group of 10 versus a group of 100 or 1,000 that you're able to communicate to. So the challenge that we are facing and stepping up to is finding the ways in which we can get in those audience areas. The way in which we make sure that we are addressing this are the STAT process as well as in work groups. As a reminder of the STAT process and how that works is we look at a deliberate and planned method of being able to take a look at how we are performing. So this is a kind of a performance management cycle. We start off with setting the goals and creating the metrics. What are the things that we're going to measure to make sure that things are moving forward in those strategic plan areas? So we verify those metrics. And the first stage of it really is about collecting quality data and then also analyzing that data to make sure that we have the appropriate eyeballs on understanding what is it that we're pulling, what is that information going to tell us about moving forward on the goal that we created. The heart of the process is the element where we pull together our folks in a district stat session. This allows us to be able to look over and have dialogue about the data that we see, be able to talk about ways in which we can improve, and also develop a hypothesis on what is it that's going to move us to that next stage. So that's the stat sessions themselves. We move into follow-up where we remeasure and take action. Coming out of each session, participants take action items based on the conversation that happens. We want to make sure that it's not, and we have this cycle on a regular basis. About every 7 weeks, we're coming back and finishing a complete cycle, and there's 5 that we have in place for the year. And what this does is allows us to be able to take ideas and see them in a quick basis. So instead of waiting to the end of the year to determine whether something has been successful or the end of a program, we're able to walk along and take a look at it along the way. If we're seeing the anticipated trajectory in terms of what we're doing, a lot of it's, okay, let's keep this up and let's fine-tune that. It's also an opportunity for other schools, when we have the school stat, for the other schools to be able to talk amongst each other and say, I see that you're seeing some successes or some preliminary things that look like that's going well. How can we implement that where we're at? And or this has promise, but there's something missing. And another principal states, well, we had that same issue, and this is how we address that. So again, remeasuring, pulling that data once again at the end of the cycle, and we start that process again, verify the metrics that are within that. We have a team that works together, and we meet every single week to go over planning that process. So every week we have meetings in place to make sure that this 7-week cycle goes smoothly. To give you a look at the district stat level, the stat T process, there's 2 elements. We have district stat and school stats. For the district stats, we have 2 categories that we looked at based on the priorities that were set by the district, by the board, by principals, teachers, and community members. And these address the areas. The behavior team addresses 2.4.1, 2.4.6, 2.4.7, and 2.4.8, for those of you with your decoder. And then the data use teams, 2.5 is the area that they're focused on, 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3. And this allows us to be able to address these from a district level. Some of these same elements are being looked at the building level. You see here we have 26 schools that are involved in the STAT process where we're reviewing the actions. We did this last year. We have a different set of schools this year. Stayed away from principals, our buildings that had principals that had just started in their building this year, or ones who were statted last year. And so we have 4 cohorts. Amongst that, it gives us 13 elementary schools, 7 middle schools, and 6 high schools. And as I mentioned before, this puts us into 5 cycles throughout the year, about 7-week process in between those. There are 7 people on each of the district stats, and there's about 7 or so principals that are involved with the school stat piece of it. The data that we looked at the school stat, primarily it kind of focused on making sure that we responded to the needs of the principals and the understanding as a panelist or the executive council on being able to connect with those schools to find out what's happening and what's best practices that are being executed there. Coaching visit completions we're taking a look at. We looked at attendance, we also looked at discipline, and we also looked at grades, especially on that secondary level. So we were just finished talking about the STAT process, but we also have work groups. This year we have 3 work group areas. These are the numbers that are associated with this work groups, but to kind of give you a nutshell of that, there's 16 objectives that are being taken a look at, that are being examined through our work groups. One of those is foundational systems. The next one is positive and welcoming schools, and the other one is teaching and learning. And as you can see, there are 16 objectives. Some of the objectives are being looked at from more than one area. Let's say, for example, 2.4 is being looked at in work group 2 and in work group 3. But underneath this are 41 different strategies that are being examined through the work groups. They meet on the same kind of window about every other month. It kind of hits around the stat cycle process. They'll be meeting again in 2 weeks. But this pulls together folks within this building to make sure that we have a collaborative effort between our departments. It breaks down the situation where there's silos, where someone's working on a particular project. They're able to come together on a regular basis and understand what each of the project elements are doing that intersect with each other, but maybe have different responsibilities. And they update that process in a system that allows us to be able to say what's going on. In this system, it's right within our own Office 365. With IMS and their department, hand-created this process that allows them to be able to report on the status of things that are going on. They're able to state if they're in progress. They're able to put comments related to successes, as well as are there any challenges. And it's a way of communicating with each other about what's updating, what needs updating, but also when they come together, they're able to have a productive conversation because it's already laid out there in terms of the process. So that's a living kind of process that's through our Office 365 through sites, but it was customized through them. And Jerry Anderson in IMS we've been communicating, and he's experimented with being able to create charts that are automatically built within those so we can see what the status are in these particular areas. Our work groups, as I mentioned, there's 41 different strategies that they're looking at. Work group 1 has 13 of them, 9 of them in positive and welcoming schools, and teaching and learning has 19 strategies that they're implementing. As you see, most of those are on track or they are completed. We have a few that are in monitoring stage, which means they're types of things that will never be actually, or at least for a long time, won't be complete, but the work on creating something. For example, if it's implement a particular strategy, it may be created, but the implementation process is ongoing, so we're monitoring how that's working. In the 2 areas that are not yet started, we have updates, again, as I mentioned, in 2 weeks. I was able to identify this week that in those 2 particular areas, it's really about catching up on new information. And so the Tech Standards Committee is receiving technology options that meet the instructional and assessment needs. And so really it started off, but they're kind of making sure that they are aligning those before rolling them out. And so in one of the areas, which is 2.5.2, it's really about making sure that committee is able to report out before they move forward. And another one is based on school-based professional learning communities. Updates are really needed in that particular area. As they're designing this work, there's movement forward on that particular area, but this particular strategy says that it's implemented. And so they can't say it's implemented until it's been created, so it's listed as not yet started. However, the work to lead up to being able to say it is in place is being done. And so they're examining that at the building level, but also at the district level to be able to see how that a PLC actually looks and moving forward in terms of strategies. It just wasn't an identified, the actual identified area was about it being in process already. To finalize, as was mentioned, there's a lot of people involved in this particular process. The reason why I'm here presenting is part of my role, in addition to the Equity and Diversity and Title IX Administrator, is the facilitator for the strategic plan or stat plan process. And so with that, there are a lot of people that are around that. When we meet and have the stat sessions, the panel exists with our Executive Council members, as well as we have support from research with Scott Smith-Bonney, and all of the work groups are led by and participants on whoever is in charge of those particular strategy areas. And so we have 3 leads, and on each one of those work groups, at least 2 to 4 Executive Council members are on that committee, that work group as well. So if decisions need to be made right there within the meeting, they have the personnel to be able to sit there and kind of give them feedback on what's going on, which has really allowed us to move the process forward at a pace that we would not have if we didn't have both a work group and a regular stat meeting. One final thing that I'll state is related to feedback from our schools. We had an opportunity right after our last stat session to be able to ask our principals who are being statted what they thought of the process so far, what advantages and strengths are there for them, and then what areas do they feel challenged by or want improvement. We had a lot of really positive feedback, but we also had a lot of concerns that were shared to say, hey, you know, this would be an area that would really help us out. And that's the question that we ask of our principals. You know, what can we do to make this process beneficial for you and easier? We got some really strong feedback. We were able to sit and have a meeting amongst our panel and come up with some strategies to address each of the concerns that were voiced and immediately implement that. And that's the purpose, again, of the strategic planning process. We're not waiting to the end of the year to get feedback, but along the way we can make adjustments. And so our principals have spoken about what they like. We're going to keep those. They've spoken about things that they'd like to see improved, and we're making adjustments for that. Our next stat session is next week. It's actually a day and a half of meetings with them, and so we'll be implementing some feedback from them right away. And so that's one of the things I really enjoy about that process is that it allows it to be fluid and responsive to our schools and our district personnel. I'm open to any questions.
I think you talked fast enough. You talked
Thank you.
really-
I'll
did a
give credit
great
to my
job.
wife. She brought me coffee really late in the day.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, I felt like I was watching over the hedge. No, I'm kidding. So I wanted to point out that Ms. Williams and I got to sit in on part of a stat session. Can you just briefly share with everyone what it might look like, you know, how it's set up, and then what some of the conversation might be? Because I think it's fascinating to work through this process and helping schools improve, so.
Okay. So STAT process consists of being able to review, as I mentioned, the data and information related to each of the buildings. So let's say we're in a particular STAT process. We have 6 or 7 elementary school principals. In that, they've taken a look at data that's run on a particular area. In, let's say, for example, we've been taking a look at attendance, and we've been taking a look at disciplinary infractions. We want to be able to take a look at our suspension rates. We want to look at office referrals. So we're looking at that data, hoping that we can find the elements that will improve the instruction time, how much time that they're actually in front of their teacher instead of in the office or instead of at home. And so in that process, we have the panelists, which are primarily our executive council members, but folks who are tied in directly with that particular strategy or area that we're looking at. And so there are a list of questions that we have that we've thought about in terms of when working with this data, what is it telling us? So we're looking at the what's happened in the past, what is that telling us, what questions does it bring up? Then we look at what's happening now or what can we do now about that. So listening to this information or knowing this information, what are some things that you think that are causing this? So we're seeing success in this particular area because we implemented this particular strategy, and then the principals are able to share that information. And then finally, okay, well, what can we do next? And so they can walk away with an action item to say, look, I'm going to implement this particular strategy, or I'm going to change this particular element here. That process that we've had in the past has been where we have our panelists and our statees in the process. One of the feedback elements is for a more organic conversation that we're in more of a mixed around the table element versus the panelists coming or being on one side of the table and the statees on the other. So, but the conversation still remains that we want that to be where there's a conversation that happens amongst the folks who are being statted to say, what is it that you see, what is the data telling you, and how can we improve? With that, we take notes on the action items that come out of that. We also are reviewing, there's a memo that's created going into it that runs all of the data that research is put together on those particular items, and they also create customized graphics to represent that data as well. And so we talk about the key findings that the data shows. So maybe we say, well, we've seen in this particular school, we've seen an improvement in the amount of instructional time. There's less office referrals. What are some strategies that you're using to do that? Share that with your colleagues, and so that process, we keep it to, we have a set amount of norms that come into it. We walk into those meetings assuming competence of each one of the people at the table and positive intent, and we also articulate that at the beginning of each session and remind each other, we're here assuming that what you're doing is based on that you are professionals and that what you're doing is going to make a difference for students. So how can we come with a solution-based focused and supportive element? So what can we do as a district to be supportive, or is there something that you need from a colleague to be supportive?
Great, thank you very much. Is Cross and Joplin still involved, or are they still sitting on the STAT meeting?
So UPD was
Or UPD.
UPD is still involved in a and less than they were the year before. So it's really turned over to a lot of our staff. So we're running our own data and making adjustments when we get feedback from either a principal or executive director and some things that they'd like to see different, perhaps from curriculum instruction, on things that need to be looked at. We have the ability to be able to run that data internally and create those visualizations. They facilitate when we have our weekly meetings with the team. It's comprised of Canyon Chisholm in CIA. It's comprised of Teresa Esky in research, Chris Flott, who is the secretary in equity and diversity, and myself. And we meet on a weekly basis and we consult with UPD on that. And then they'll come in, they come in on each of the actual STAT session process, so they assist with the facilitation process. But much of the work is being led by and transitioned to completely OPS's responsibility.
And that was the goal. Mr. Scanlon.
Thank you for the update on the strategic plan. I guess at the next update, just, I guess, my mindset, I don't know how other board members feel, but I'd be more interested in the progress and the results that we've realized with the strategic plan, more so than the process. And that's just because, I'd like to see, we've addressed the process a couple of different times, I believe, in previous presentations. I'd like to see what results we're getting and what progress we're making as a district, and, that would...
How would you like that to look?
Like the goals and the strategies that we have, how are we basing that we're being successful in them? What improvements are we seeing as a district as we have the work group strategies and we also have the other goals? How are those actually? How do we know we're progressing along that path to succeeding on those? I know a lot of them are long-term goals, but we still need those intermediate kind of hurdles to figure out, yes, we're moving in the right direction. Because I guess it's trying to, in my mind, stay at the board level. I want to see the results. The process, that's something that, you guys might have to tweak a number of different ways to try to get the desired outcomes. But I guess just trying to stay at the higher level and not getting into the weeds, I'd like to know what the results are, and are we progressing in the direction that we have, set out in our strategic plan. How do we gauge that we're moving in the right direction? It's not really the board that says what process we should be using. It's these are the outcomes that as a board we've set, and these are the goals. It's up to the administration and the educational experts that are employed by the administration to figure out how do we get to those goals. So I guess I'd just like to kind of try to bring it up to that level, that board level of, yes, we're seeing the results that we'd like to see, and this is why we believe we're succeeding in accomplishing the strategic plan. That's just what I'd like to see at the next update.
Okay, let me know that, to see if I understand this correctly. So, for example, of those particular areas and breaking down the areas prioritized, we have, for example, our work groups have these 41 different areas that they're examining. Those 41 different areas also include a few more, but it was 36 of them that were prioritized by the board, but they have a few more that they're working on. because they fit and overlap.
And I just say real
So-
quickly, like, that was the last two slides, and I appreciated those last couple of slides.
But
I
the
think-
expansion of this is what you're talking about. So if I were to present and list out the 41 different things and then that we're accomplishing, and so that we know. And
How do we know that 11 are on track for that first work group 1? Or how are you determining that 11 are on track and that we're succeeding in those 11? Not necessarily the process, just the results. What are we getting from there? How are we judging that 11 are on track, 2 are completed and completed successfulely? I would like to assume that's what we consider as complete.
Sure.
Just kind of that level, I guess, is what I'd like to see.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Evans, I'll let you.
That is a great question, and actually, from our perspective, we want to be able to show and demonstrate to the board and the community that we're following up on the strategic plan, that we're not letting it sit on a shelf and die. But at the end of the day, Mr. Scanlon's exactly right. We need to show results, and the board's primary role is to see those results. And so we're giving this as an overview that we do on an occasional basis, and Mr. Scanlon's right, we have done that in the past. But we can certainly bring those back. Let me give you some examples of what things might be a part of some of these strategies that are on track. One of the things they look at is how many visits to classrooms that the principal's making and utilizing the system that you witnessed the other day. We had a board meeting where we went through the online system. It allows you to see, here's what I witnessed in my 5-minute walkthrough in 25 classrooms the last week. That would be a part of an on-track, because that's an expectation that we review in the stats session. And we have a multiplicity of those kinds of strategies that we've implemented over the last 2 years. But that's the result you want to see. So how do you know you're on track? Well, because we are doing the visits. But at the end of the day, the reason you did the visits was to improve classroom practice and to improve the quality of instruction so that you would improve the quality of student learning. So the big ticker is, at the end of the day, student achievement. But at the end of the day, prior to that, we should show, how do you know you're on track? If you said you're going to do more observations, where's your data? How do you know you're utilizing this strategy for behavior intervention? Where's your data? And then at the end of the day is, did those strategies make a difference? So you said you did them, you can show evidence you did them, did it make a difference? Because that is the board. At the end of the day, the board's going to say, Mr. Superintendent, all that's fine and good and looks pretty doggone good. You guys have really put some good things together, but did it make a difference? And the truth is, this is a whole lot of work. If it doesn't make a difference, we sure ought not be doing it. So we better be able to demonstrate that we are making a difference with these strategies, or we need to be doing something different. So I think it's a great question. It's one that I would say to staff. In fact, they hear those kind of comments from me too. Okay, so here's where we're at. Here's what we think has the highest return on our investment. Is it returning? Just like you in your business would say, what's the highest return on my strategies to improve my bottom line? Our bottom line is student success. In multiple ways that's measured, from achievement to behaviors to attendance, the whole multiplicity. So I think it's a great question, and I think we can work on that and bring some things back to you, because we've got midpoint pieces we can look at, and then you've got end-of-the-road points at the end of the year and at the end of the summer as you get that summative data, too, that you want to be a part of it. So I think it's great. I think that's a super question, and hopefully we're not going over this too much, but I kind of like everyone seeing that we're not just putting that book on a shelf and saying all this work, energy, and effort that everyone spent on this, we don't really care about it. We put it on a shelf and let it gather dust. We really haven't. We have not let it gather dust, and it should be the underpinning for the results that you want to see. Thank you.
So I'll work with Mr. Ray on calendar item for that, and Ms. Merica.
I just kind of wanted to build off of what Mr. Scanlon had said. I think I don't remember if it was in the final strategic plan or if it was in one of the other documents that we built from that, but we did identify specific qualitative measurements for how we were going to track our progress. And I think that would be something that, if you guys would agree, would be helpful to show, like, okay, we said we are going to measure this strategy by looking at these areas. If we could get a report back on here's where we were strategies have been, here's the things that we've done, here's the new measurement in those areas. And one other thing, I thought it was super, super helpful last time, and it may just be the way I think, is we had kind of color-coded the strategies before, where we had, and this sounds really weird, but database decision workshops talk about it all the time, of having the information laid out in front of you of, here's a visual representation of not started, on track, and complete, because then you kind of have that visual reference versus textually reading, okay, 2 are complete, 11 are on track. We haven't not started any of them, if you understand what I'm saying there.
Got you. So like if I was doing this one here and I would have taken bullet point 1, it was in green, bullet point 2 was in blue, and bullet point 3 was in red.
Yes, or like a representation that was on a line or something. Like,
Pie charts.
I think
Or
it was
pie
a bar
charts.
graph.
Well, I think it was
Oh,
a
bar
bar
graph?
graph. I think it was a bar graph. that we
Okay,
got before.
okay, got you. I know the exact one you're talking about.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
And this is going to sound really ridiculous, but just in case they're still watching, I wanted to let my mother know that it is her math, or her classroom in a math small group that is in the lower right-hand corner of the question slide. I recognize
We'll give
the
her
picture.
credit.
Oh, nice. Right there? Okay, excellent. You think that was by accident? So, absolutely. So, good feedback. These are things that can be done. As a matter of fact, the information is already in it now. It's where I've drawn from to be able to present this. And I'm hearing about more detail in the particular elements and areas. And that's going to be something that perhaps there's a document versus the 10 slides that can help with that. So, because it's going to be, obviously, you get the kind of detail that you want to. If we're printing off these 41 strategies and all the different steps that are going with them, because each of those have tactics, and some of them may have 6 tactics underneath the strategy. I just stopped at that. But I think it'll be extremely helpful in answering the question, how do we know that we've accomplished a particular goal? We say it's on track, but how do we know? That's because the goal was to do this, we did it, it's done. And so I think we can make that happen, and then I'll come back. And then the color coding type of element in that bar graph, that was from a different system, but in our current system, what I was mentioning there, I work with Jerry Anderson in IMS. He's creating something that allows us to be able to pull that same kind of color coding system. It'll look a little bit different, but it will be color coded, and it will be in a bar graph. It's actually a bar this way versus bar sideways, but I think it'll accomplish that, so we can make that happen.
And then Mr. Ray
I'm sorry.
wanted me to remind everyone that on 9/28 of 15, he did send the scorecard with showing here are the results from before, and here's the results after the first year of the strategic plan. And just because that information is embargoed, we don't get it right away, so some of that we don't see, but we'll be having the scorecard again. Ms. Williams.
So, I would like, and not necessarily right now, but maybe as an email to the board, and/or an update in the next update. I would like to know, I would like for you to share with me, because I know that you're working directly with it, but I really want to start getting some input from the student perspective on those prioritized objectives in regards to their education. And I think I closed it already, so it's nope, keep going, keep going. One more. On 1.1, 1.2, and 2.4. As I know that you're working with the Voices Council, and I know that you and Mr. Dixon are working with them on multiple things, but I would really like in that the next update to really bring some student perspective on their education. I think that's an important conversation for us to have as a board as we're talking about strategic plan, and we're talking about those objectives are directly correlated to those students are directly correlated to their own education. So if you could figure out a way to kind of bring that insight and input, I would be appreciative of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Scanlon, is it another to-do? He's got a
No,
lot of
it's
to-dos.
just it's a clarification. I mean, you had mentioned a very detailed document, and again, I don't want to get too far into the details. I just want to know what results you've gotten, and you know, tell me what you've done that's improved the situation, what hasn't worked, what has worked. I don't need, an 18-page dissertation about, this is the process that we use, this and that. I just want to know what we're doing. Is it working or is it not working? And I might not have used that word dissertation correctly. I don't want a whole thick page or thick book of stuff to go through. I just want to know, are we moving in the right direction and what results
And what are
are showing
what are the
that?
ways that
Yep.
show that? Okay.
I'm trying to stay big picture.
Okay.
He wants the roll-up, right?
I want the cliff notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, very good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This is, it's good to just remember, and I guess, I would, if the board wants, we were sending out at one time, I think, stat session updates, or it may have been more detailed, but if you would like to get those, and if you would not, that's fine, but if you want those, can you just let Mr. Ray know, and he can provide those as well to everyone. Is that fair, Mr. Ray? Sure, absolutely. Okay, great. All right, with that, thank you very much. We're going to move on to J2A, action item, change order number 001, 2014 bond program beverage magnet portable classroom. Someone can just give us a quick explanation on that. I see Mr. Summers coming from Jacobs. That would be awesome.
I will surely make it quick. So what we're recommending approval for here is really change order number 1. And I think the question that had come up is the significant increase in the contract value from $80,000. And the important thing to note on this particular change order, this is a change order to one of your construction managers at risk. So when the initial contract comes to the board in the construction manager agreement, we're really only setting the pre-construction costs. And those are costs for estimating, scheduling, design review. There's no cost in their original contracts for any actual construction work. So this particular change order is adding in the placement of portables that are needed for swing space to facilitate the rest of the building construction that'll start in the summer. So this is a change order to their contract for that scope, and in a couple of months, and for several other projects, we'll continue to bring the GMP forward. And that will encompass the entire project. So this is just a pre-construction piece. The other thing to note is this cost here, this $1.142 million, is funded out of the program funds. If you remember, we had a lot of discussions about temporary housing and abatement and different things that are outside of the project budget. So Beveridge's $27.5 million project budget stays whole. This $1.14 million change order is funded outside of that. So again, that's one of the reasons why we have the program dollars to keep the project funds whole. So that's what we're asking for approval on. The intent is to have these portables in place near May so that we can start the abatement process in some of the existing building and really start the construction process.
Mr. Scanlon.
Just for the public's knowledge, I mean, obviously that could be perceived as something that, wow, this is way over budget. Could you talk to that? Is this this change order with the original contract, is that still within the projected budget that we had for Beveridge?
Absolutely. I would say it's something that was planned for. The change order is the official mechanism that the board has to add it to that contractor, but from a budgeting, a planning, a scheduling, a scope of work, it was always intended to be this way. The costs were budgeted for. It was a planned event. So it's not how some might perceive a change order as, uh-oh, we found something we didn't plan for, now we need to pay for that. This is not that scenario. This is officially the district has to approve a change order to amend their contract for this work. But it's planned, it's an owner-directed type of change order, it's budgeted for, that's it. Fairly straightforward type of change.
Mrs. Underwood.
So I think you mentioned it. I just want to make sure I understand, and so the rest of the board understands. So this came up because the GMP hasn't been set yet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So So it's more kind of a timing thing than anything else?
So
Is that right?
this type of work is really considered, pre-construction work. It's not the core scope of what the construction manager's hired for in essence. So the approach is, or the process is, we change order their pre-construction agreement, which is the agreement that's been approved by the board. And the way that the district policy is set up, it's in line with the state statute. We'll bring the GMP back as an amendment, and then ultimately, these costs also will roll into that GMP as an overall contract value for the construction manager at risk, even though the district might fund this out of the program budget and this out of the project budget. That doesn't really matter in the contract. That's something we handle on the coding side and with finance, how things get paid. But it is a sequencing of work. The design's not far enough along yet to set the GMP, but we need to get some things in motion and get this taken care of from a pre-construction perspective.
Dr. Turnquist?
I'm wondering, and Mrs. Underwood and Mr. Scanlon in particular, would it be helpful to the board members if when we have a change order like this, we would add a little verbiage in there that covers some of this explanation so that the public sees it immediately? Can we do that, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so. I mean, and this large of a change order, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't want to get into micromanaging change orders on all the different construction, but when you have something that the original contract price was $80,000 and your first change order is over 14 times that amount, I think that needs to be explained to the public.
Sure.
and-
With a
and
reference
the
to
board.
the fact that it comes out of the program, not out of the project budget.
And if you could just, for the record, define GMP for the
So
public.
GMP is guaranteed maximum price, and in the construction manager at risk agreement, the district's hiring them to establish a guaranteed maximum price, and we do that before the design is complete, and that is their commitment, or they're guaranteeing this building is going to be built for $15 million or $12 million, or whatever that definitive amount is. It is based on design documents, specifications, very, very common practice in the Omaha market, but that's what the guaranteed maximum price is.
And could the project come in under that?
Absolutely. And the other important thing to note about this particular change, it is written in the GMP philosophy, so any savings be it below this 1.1, because they still have to bid and buy the work, would return to the owner. It would return back into the project or the program and be available for OPS utilization. Yep.
Great. With that, at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve change order number 001-2014 bond program beverage magnet portable classrooms.
So moved.
So motion by Mr. Scanlon, second?
Second.
By Mrs. Underwood. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Scanlon.
Aye.
Underwood.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Godding.
Aye.
America.
Aye.
5-0.
Motion carries. With that, we'll move on to J2B, and thank you to staff for being flexible to get that pulled up. J2B legislative update. We are having a legislative meeting tomorrow, so we don't have an update on that at this time. So hopefully tomorrow we'll find out what's going on, and we'll keep you informed. And as Mr. Evans said, we'll decide who's going to testify in Lincoln and how all that's going to go, but we'll keep folks updated since we don't have another board meeting for over a month. We do have a workshop tentatively scheduled in a couple of weeks.
29th.
The 29th, or in a week and a half. And some of that information ties back to the strategic plan piece, so, or we're working on getting that scheduled. So with that, we're going to move on to J2C, RFQ Comprehensive Capital Facility Assessment. I think Mr. Warnicki?
Good evening. I'd just like to discuss the Capital Facility Assessment Program, and I'll be able to answer any questions that you have at the end of the presentation. To begin with, a need for a capital budgeting plan was identified by the school board and in an audit of the Buildings and Grounds Division performed by the Council of Great City Schools. This capital budget plan would identify funding needs for maintenance, repairs, and general building modifications. The information will also be used to develop long-term financial capital improvement plans. To develop these financial plans, we need to conduct a detailed, comprehensive inspection and evaluation of our buildings and sites. There are 3 levels of assessing conditions of facilities. The first level, inspectors consult with the maintenance department and school staff. Inspectors have general knowledge of facility components. A visual representative inspection of components of the facility is performed. An inspector notes the age of equipment and rates the equipment's condition. The second level of inspections is the inspectors consult with the maintenance department, like in the first level. Inspectors are more in a discipline area, or specialists, such as building components, architects, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers. A detailed inspection of components of the facility is performed. An inspector notes the age of equipment and identifies the age versus life cycle costing. The level 3 inspection is the same as a level 2, but the inspections are more detailed. And along with the inspections, there's an inventory of equipment and cataloging of major components. There's also tests of efficiency and performance of the equipment, basically a commissioning of a facility. The request for qualifications for a comprehensive capital facility assessment was issued on September 29th, with submittals due from interested firms November 3rd. The scope of the work included assessing 90 school buildings with approximately 10 million square feet. The assessment requires the selected firm to conduct a comprehensive inspection and evaluation of all major building systems and components. Areas to be inspected included sites, building envelope, excluding roofs, interior finishes, heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems, electrical systems, plumbing, and other systems such as elevators. The assessment will utilize age, useful life, conditions of components, energy efficiencies, and other metrics as appropriate. The building report will include a written and photo documentation of all conditions. The final deliverable will include a maintainable database that can be updated, revised, and integrated into our facility management system. Interested firms were required to provide the following information in their request for qualifications: a detailed statement of the firm's qualifications, the proposed staff that they're planning on using, and their resumes. Identify any sub-consultants that may be used to perform any portion of the work, staff that they would propose, and their resumes. Provide experience of the firm with projects similar in size and scope, knowledge of the project requirements and ability to respond to the district needs, define the approach to be used in performing and delivering the project, and the ability to meet the district's economic inclusion objectives. We received RFQs from 5 firms, which were evaluated and ranked by a committee of the following: the construction manager, the maintenance manager, supervisor of schoolhouse planning, and myself, the director of buildings and grounds. The committee chose 3 firms with the highest points to interview. Each interview was 1 hour in length, consisting of 30 minutes of presentation from each firm, 15 minutes from questions from the committee, and 15 minutes of general discussion and clarification of the documents in the presentation. Each of the firms being interviewed was also asked to provide a compensation proposal in a sealed envelope. These envelopes were not opened until the interviews and evaluations were completed for all 3 firms. After evaluating the firms, the committee selected DLR Group for recommendation to the board to conduct a comprehensive capital facility assessment of our facilities. DLR received the highest total combined points from the document review and the interviews. There were 722 points that they received out of a possible 820. DLR Group's strength starts with the individuals identified to be involved with a building assessment. DLR's team members are registered architects, professional mechanical and electrical engineers, and civil engineers. Staff experiences range from 10 to 35 years in their fields, with extensive work in K-12 schools. DLR identified 5 sub-consulting firms that will assist in the inspections and evaluations of the facilities. The staff of these sub-consultants are also professional architects, mechanical and electrical engineers. Their experience ranged from 15 to 40 years in their fields, and they also have experience in K-12 schools. DLR and their subconsultant, Ferris Engineering, has experience in conducting facility assessments with similar scope in K-12 schools locally and regionally. These include, for DLR, State of Montana Public Schools, facility condition and assessment for 3,400 buildings with 30 million square feet. Kansas City, Kansas, facility condition assessment for 66 facilities, 20,500 students. Locally, DLR conducted the facility assessment for Westside Public Schools with 15 facilities and approximately 6,000 students. Ferris Engineering did Iowa City Community School District. They conducted the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and fire protection assessments for 29 schools with over 2.3 million square feet. DLR Group and their subcontractors have local offices that will allow the involvement of the district and individual schools. Being local, they will also allow the inspection teams to be able to respond to questions and concerns during and also after the assessment by the schools and by central staff. While DLR Group and their subcontractor, Ferris Engineering, have offices locally, they also have offices regionally and nationally. If needed, these offices can provide additional support in areas of specialization, reviewing data, or additional staffing. To address the board members' concerns that a more detailed assessment than what we had done in the past was needed, we felt that a Level 2 assessment should be completed. DLR's approach is similar to a Level 2 assessment. The approach is not preconceived, standardized template or a format, but it will be a collaborative process and responsive to the needs of Omaha Public Schools. DLR will organize the process by developing the inspection and assessment team from their firm and some sub-consultants. DLR Group has identified a team of 40 individuals. It will be divided up into 4 teams of 5 members each. Each team will consist of a civil engineer, an architect, a mechanical and electrical engineer, and a fifth individual will be dependent on the building that's being inspected. They could be a structural engineer, a specialist, such as somebody to inspect swimming pools, an additional architect, or another additional engineer. These teams will begin the process by reviewing building information provided by the Buildings and Grounds Division. Teams will review building documentation, conduct interviews to determine the condition and performance of building systems, reviewing previous assessments, review the work history of equipment, including modifications and upgrades. Teams will visit each facility, conduct an interview with the principal and building engineer concerning equipment, material, specific issues that the building staff has with their building or with their facilities. The team members will walk through each facility, conduct a detailed inspection of equipment, identify the equipment inspected, catalog, assess, and rate the interior and exterior systems. The final summary report provided to the district will document the condition of major components, systems, and materials, identify deficiencies, and establish a priority level to respond to these deficiencies. The report will also establish a baseline cost for maintenance, repair, and replacement. This will allow staff to develop budgets to address yearly repair and replacement needs along with maintenance work. This report will also allow staff to develop long-range capital improvement plans for equipment or system upgrades or replacements. This report will be generated from a workable database which will allow collected building information to be updated as equipment is modified and replaced. The database will allow the ability to query or sort specific information. Examples could include ranking of equipment within a priority level, ranking equipment or materials within a school, or equipment priority across the district. After gathering this information, it will be important to be able to maintain and update this database. This will be done by using the database provided by DLR and integrating the data into our facility management system. To implement this process, DLR will provide training and support in using the software, conducting on-site inspections, performing assessments, along with assisting the integration of the data into our system. DLR will also work with the staff to identify critical components and materials to be re-inspected and to help us develop a rotating reassessment schedule to monitor the condition of the equipment. We also asked the firms to address how they would integrate economic inclusion in the assessment of our facilities. DLR acknowledges an understanding of the district's goal for using small and emerging businesses and developing a sustainable workforce in the city of Omaha. DLR identified 4 firms, 2 Tier 1s and 2 Tier 2s, that are qualified and experienced to provide consulting services. DLR preliminary evaluations of the project support an anticipated participation range of 7 to 10% of the work effort. The fee for DLR Group submitted was $840,000 and equates to 8.4 cents per square foot, which is within the range of a level 2 assessment. Approximate costs for budgeting facility assessments are: level 1 ranges from 5 to 7 cents per square foot. Remember, that's just a representative inspection of equipment and material. Level 2 ranges from 10 to 15 cents per square foot. This is a detailed inspection of equipment and material by specialists. And DLR's proposal is very close to that level 2 for inspections, and it's just at 8.4 cents is below the average. Level 3 ranges 15 to 25 cents per square foot. Again, that's a level 2 along with the commissioning of equipment. While this fee is $190,004 higher than the low fee submitted, we believe it is appropriate for the strength of the DLR Group's assessment and the depth of information that we will receive. These include DLR is planning to use, again, 20 individuals to inspect our facilities that are licensed architects and engineers with many years of experience in K-12 experience. Their attention to details by involving school building staff, walking through the entire building, and provide more detail than using a scalable percentage for assessing facility conditions. Having local offices, DLR and their subcontractors have more knowledge of local standards, construction markets, and various building codes than outsourcing to firms that are unfamiliar to these conditions. Their detailed assessment will include priority levels, recommended time for corrections and repairs, along with costs. They're involving a staff of Tier 1 and Tier 2 firms to participate in conducting inspections, assessments, and data development. This amount of detail is important to this district, since this is the first time we have done an in-depth, on-site inspection and assessment of our buildings. This information will allow staff to develop short and long-term budgets to maintain our facilities. It will also provide the school board information to develop a funding model to implement a capital improvement and replacement program for the district. This could include replacing worn-out equipment, replacing equipment with more energy-efficient equipment, or evaluating entire facilities. Again, based upon the assessment process, the information that will be provided to us, we are recommending that DLR Group be awarded the Comprehensive Capital Facility Assessment Project. Is there any questions?
Thank you very much, because that was much greater detail than what we had seen in the initial piece. Questions? Ms. Sunderwood.
Thanks for that description. It was good. It answered a lot of my questions already. But I had a couple more. So I might be remembering this incorrectly, but I know one of the reasons that the board started talking about doing a comprehensive capital facilities assessment is because we were getting just presentations made to the board about fundraising for different projects, and a lot of those projects were kind of related to sports fields. And so one of my questions was, will sports fields be included in this analysis?
Yes.
And for that matter, playgrounds. And I noticed that you mentioned site, but the RFQ had just parking lots and lighting in it.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering what the extent of the site scope is.
I believe we only mentioned parking lots, lighting, and those were in sidewalks, those type items, but we did through the interview process, ask the firms if inspecting, like the safety pads underneath the playgrounds would be part of that. Not so much the safety of the equipment, because we do that on an annual basis within our own staff, but just whether or not the, gravel playground base versus a rubber base for protection for fall. The athletic fields, we did not include too much because we already have a plan for the artificial turfs and tracks on a replacement schedule, and we did not include the stadium seating in this program.
I think just as long as we have enough information to know, if someone comes to us and says, we want to do something, and we have enough information that can guide them, well, this is what's going on at this school, and I don't know that I think there's a project already in mind when people come to us saying they're going to fundraise for something, but I think as long as the district has enough information to know, well, we know what the situation is for each of our fields, and then, in addition to that, the sites and the playgrounds and things like that. I find whatever mechanism is, I think the point is just that we have a comprehensive sort of breakdown of information for everything that's located on our property.
And we can do that a lot of times when a group comes to us and wants to donate funds to start a program or something like that, we will go out and do an evaluation for that site with them and just sort of walk through and see what they're really looking to do and how that impacts and what we can do to help them or what we need to do to help them along.
I think that's it for now. Thanks.
Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Madam President. Just kind of a follow-up to that. A couple of things that brought about the RFQ. One was the Council of Great City Schools piece, and I know Mark mentioned that. The other was a board request that prior to the bond issue, we had an evaluation of facilities, but we didn't have a group of certified, highly qualified individuals walking through the buildings. And so that was part of the board conversation with a couple of board members said, well, you just met with the engineer, the lead engineer, and put together details and updated a 5-year report, but you didn't go back out again and actually physically walk it. And so I think that's what brought it to this too, was the two things. Council of Great City Schools, board conversation about putting some experts in the building, creating a book that will have all the materials. And by the way, most districts have those, and most districts I've been a part of. And then you just update that book, and it's not as intensive. This is more intensive than we'd like to do as well, but we're kind of at a point where we've never really done this intensive an evaluation and done those timeline schedules that you can build on for parking lots, roofs, HVAC, all of those things have shelf lives, just like our water heaters in our homes. We know that once they're about 12, 14 years old, you're on borrowed time. If you're going out of town for vacation, you better turn it off or you may have a flooded basement. Well, those are the kind of things we need to really have that level of detail in one book that has those timelines that says we really better look at this roof or this HVAC because we're now on year 22, and I suspect we've got some at year 22 that this current bond issue is going to help get us caught up to date on, which is really good. But we need to keep it up to date from then on. The nice thing is, too, there's software now, and you just load it into the software so that you can keep it current after this, and it shouldn't have to be as intensive in the future.
Ms. Williams.
Me? Is it my turn? She skipped me a few times, so that's why I had to give her a little hard time. So I just have a request. Moving forward, I guess on this issue, I would have liked to see kind of the overall scorecard, and maybe that's something that can be sent to the board just kind of early on, just so we can, I think that would have probably helped some of the questions that we had. And so potentially, Mr. Warnke and Dr. Turnquist, if whatever we're looking at next, if we could just maybe get a glance at that scorecard. I'm good with your recommendation, but I just think that would have helped all of us to kind of compare what those different organizations would have provided us. You did a very good, thorough, I appreciate that. I'm tired for you. But just, that would be easy for me to look at and some others. So that was just my quick request.
Dr. Turnquist?
Just to follow up on what Mr. Evans said, we've always done the 5-year facility study, but it's a bare bones study. And this is the first time this district will have done a full, comprehensive, in-depth, with breadth, capital facility assessment, which then allows the board to develop a capital facilities plan. And plan, in terms of going back to some things Mr. Scanlon said earlier, you have to look at what your budgetary restrictions are. This gives you the kind of information that will allow you to do that in real time. And the information that would be provided, one of the pluses about DLR was that the information they provide can be uploaded into our existing facility software system, and it can be constantly modified, updated, changed, so that it's always real-time information.
Mr. Scanlon?
I guess, could we ask Mark Summers to come up from Jacobs? I just had a little bit of questions because this goes into what programs we have that are going to be in the bond that are under construction this year. I guess my concerns are that we're going to do a facility study, and I know tonight I believe we approved 4 major renovations for schools that we're going to be basically gutting, and I know previous to that we've got Beveridge and we've got some others, and my concerns are, is this the right time to be doing the study when it's, I believe it was said that it'd be completed by July of 2016, and yet we've got major renovations that won't be complete until 2017, and then even more that won't be complete until 2018, and to go out and kind of try to analyze our district where we put the RFQ out for 90 schools at a cost of, I think it was about $840,000. That just concerns me that